Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Air Raid Hour. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis. Joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. And as per usual in the offseason, joined by Kendall Mursky. You can find him on Twitter at Mursky Kendall because he likes to put his last name first just to mess with me. Together we are the Bills guys. This is the Air Raid Hour presented by the Cover One Sports Network. Welcome in everybody in the chat. It's we are what? It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We are about 4 days away from rumor mill gossip girl central here on the Air Raid Hour as Monday the illegal tampering period opens. I believe at what is it? Is it 4 p.m. or is it noon? I believe it's 4 p.m. The illegal tampering period opens on Monday, but I don't know. NFL Network is starting their special Sunday at 1. So maybe they got a memo.
Let's not be naive. There's
that
tampering going on right now.
Oh, yeah. The Bills, apparently the Bills weren't meeting with Kyle Rudolph at the Combine. So there's definitely some tampering going on. I think as long as everyone's okay with it, we're okay with it here at the Air Raid Hour, as long as only the Bills are allowed to illegally tamper. But some big news since we have been off the air on Monday. Russell Wilson, now a Denver Bronco, and Khalil Mack, now a Los Angeles Charger, for apparently like a buck and a half, a second round pick and a 6th round pick next year. So the Chicago Bears unloading that contract, eating a ton of dead cap. And now Khalil Mack gets to line up for the next 3 seasons opposite of Bosa. So gentlemen, what are your thoughts on Khalil Mack and Russ Wilson now coming into the AFC, both in the AFC West? Some people look at it from the perspective of, well, now the Bills have the upper hand at trying to gain the 1 seed because everyone in the AFC West is going to eat their young. And other people look at it like, yeah, that's cool and all, but once we get to the playoffs, it's going to be a lot tougher to win those games and get to the ultimate goal, which is the Super Bowl. Dave, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts to all of these new additions to the AFC? And is there even going to be? They should the NFC just fold?
Well, okay, so right, like Brady retires. That's one major QB gone from the NFC, right? And
Kyler Murray's going back to baseball.
So you look at the NFC landscape, and yes, you got Rodgers there, and yes, you have Stafford there with the Rams, but they're older guys, right? So you look at the landscape of the NFC, and you're like, okay, you got Kyler, sure, and you got Dak as your kind of young, up and coming stud-esque quarterbacks, right? But then you go over to the AFC, and you're like, wow, you've got Herbert, you've got Burrow, you've got Mahomes, you've got Josh Allen. Whatever you want to say about Mac Jones, you got Mac Jones. You still have Lamar Jackson. Now you add Russell Wilson in the mix, and you still have middle tier guys like Derek Carr, Ryan Tannehill, Baker Mayfield. I mean, the AFC is just loaded with quarterback talent. So what I would say is, while it's a great idea in theory to think that, like, okay, maybe the Chargers or maybe the Broncos can now knock the Chiefs off a game or two and get the Bills that 1 seed, the road mathematically, like, I know odds wise, the Bills Super Bowl odds actually were improved, but I don't see how adding a Hall of Fame will be Hall of Fame quarterback and Russell Wilson, still pretty relatively in his prime, to a roster that is pretty stacked with talent, especially at the skill positions, is going to make things any easier for the Bills, right? It's just one more AFC team to jump over. And when it gets to the playoffs, it is one more team to jump over. So the saving grace, obviously, is it's the fixed number of teams make the playoffs, right? So there's going to be good quarterbacks that don't make the playoffs. I don't think it matters as much for the regular season as far as the Bills are concerned and what this means for them. It may actually help them get the 1 seed, but I still don't want to see Russell Wilson in a playoff game. I don't want to see him, right? Because he's proven, he's won a Super Bowl. So it just adds more so to the, I guess, dominance, I would say, of the AFC right now over the NFC. And I know the Rams won the Super Bowl, but by and large, the AFC just looks like the more stacked conference right now as you head into 2022, even before the Russell Wilson trade. And this just adds to it. And I didn't even get to Khalil Mack.
Your boy Lettuce comes in before we get to Kendall here. Says the Bills should be tampering with Matt Hawk's employment status. R4 punt. God, R4. Okay, there we go. Hashtag R4 punt god. Now I got that.
Mhm.
Took me a second there. So your boy let us always appreciate the super chats. Always appreciate the punt god comments. Yeah, I'll tell you what, like in terms of Matt Hawk, the Bills need to get to business over the next 3 days releasing him, because if he's still on the roster Monday at 4 p.m., he gets a $1 million roster bonus. So the Bills might just fuck around and keep Matt Hawk next year. So
Oh, boy.
hopefully in the next 3 days we get some news, some saving grace, because if the Bills pay Matt Hawk a $1 million bonus, that to me tells me his roster spot might be pretty safe, and I do not want to see that. But Kendall, what are your thoughts on the new look, at least for now, AFC?
I share a lot of the same thoughts as Tilt, where it's kind of a little bit of both, where it probably does strengthen our probability to get the 1 seed, but I don't want to see Russell Wilson in the playoffs. But I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, the only AFC West team we play in the regular season is the Chiefs. So as long as the Chiefs aren't making these moves for Khalil Mack, or they're not making these moves for, a crazy wide receiver on top of what they already have, stuff like that, it's not too worrisome, because at the end of the day, once you get to the playoffs, anything can happen. Anything can happen. Like you said, Judge, certain quarterbacks getting in means certain quarterbacks aren't going to get in. Like, not every quarterback in the AFC is going to make it into the playoffs. So, Russ getting in might mean Herbert isn't. It might mean like Derek Carr. All of these guys, it's crazy to think Derek Carr is the worst quarterback in that division. But it's just nuts how crazy this AFC landscape is. At the end of the day, all we got to do is punch our ticket to get in. And I think it makes it easier for us to punch that ticket with the number 1 next to our logo going into the AFC playoffs. So that's kind of where I'm looking at it. I don't really have a shortage of confidence with the Bills and how they're going to play in the playoffs, given the experience that we've had over the past 2 years and all the lessons we've learned from those trips to the playoffs. I'm not really worried with what caliber quarterback we're going to be playing, because I don't think we're going to be playing any better caliber of quarterback than the one we've been eliminated by for 2 years.
Yeah. And just to close out this sort of segment here, Greg Tom said it best on Twitter today. These teams, they're not lapping us. They're just trying to catch up to what the Buffalo Bills were. So while some people might see the splash of Russ Wilson, they might see the splash of Khalil Mack, and they're like, well, we need to go make a splash of our own. Do we? Like, if a splash becomes available, go have fun and splash around in the pool. But if a splash does not become available, just stick to your guns, get incrementally better, and you're still better because those teams are still trying to catch up to you. So you are still better, or you still a ring above some of those teams that made moves over the past 2 days. We were in the playoffs. They were not. So at the end of the day, it's not like we have to make a big move, even though I think a lot of fans at this point are going to be severely disappointed if the Buffalo Bills don't make some kind of splash move. I'm starting to feel like the splash move is going to come in the draft. I think the Buffalo Bills might be trading up in the draft. I'm starting to just sort of get a little bit of a feeling about that, but that's a conversation for another day. Your boy Lettuce comes in with another super chat, says, just a reminder, playoff Russ couldn't beat Goff missing a finger. So we always have that to fall back on. Josh
Plus,
Allen
Denver has a new head coach too, so you don't really know how it's going to work out.
Yeah,
we know how Judge feels about that.
He's a great one. He's a great one, right? Like, it's they
can't be worse than Big Fangio.
All right, let's shift our focus to the topic of today's show, free agency. Like we said, legal tampering period is on Monday. Our show is going to be rumor mill central on Monday. Who knows? Maybe the Bills will officially have completed a deal or two by the end of the day on Monday. It's a good thing we start at 9 p.m. So we can get some Brandon Bean after dark action possibly in the first day of the illegal tampering period. But let's start. I want to go a little out of order here, and I want to start free agency in our conversations today about what free agents are available, who we should pursue, etc. I want to start with tight end. Obviously, because there was some news that came out today via like Roto World, NBC Sports Edge, whatever it's called now. The Athletic, the Giants insider, Dan Duggan, says he's feeling pretty confident that his sources inside the New York Giants feel that Evan Ingram to the Buffalo Bills is a pretty solid possibility. We were having a conversation in the Cover One group chat earlier One of the new guys, Kevin, was talking about how Kay Adams was pretty convinced that the Buffalo Bills were in on Evan Ingram at the trade deadline. It was either last season or the season before. So the Buffalo Bills clearly have some kind of fascination with Evan Ingram. We know that they were in on Gronk last year as well. We had this conversation on the show before the combine. And I said, like, David Njoku, Evan Ingram, OJ Howard. I'm like, all of those guys are going to get overpaid for potential, for their potential, what they could be. I'd rather just sit back and pick up one of the dust heap guys, maybe Max Williams, maybe Durham Smythe, etc. We're going to get to a number of guys here who maybe could fall to the Bills' lap as a bargain. I severely felt like some of these guys were going to get overpaid. Sure enough, David Njoku franchise tagged, Mike Gesicki franchise tagged. Now all these tight ends are off the market, so the expectation is it's like, okay, Evan Ingram's going to get mega paid now. There's no way the Buffalo Bills would possibly be in on an Evan Ingram. But it's also possible that like maybe I overestimated Evan Ingram's market, or maybe Evan Ingram is willing to take a smaller deal to come play with Josh Allen, maybe on a 1-year deal. I'm starting to warm up to the idea of Evan Ingram to Buffalo. If we can get him for 1 year, I don't want to give him guaranteed multi-year deal. And if we can get him for a solid term, 1 year, $4 to $6 million. If we can get him on that contract to come in and be TE2, play slot receiver, probably re-sign Isaiah McKenzie, draft a guy, I feel confident that we have enough bodies in the receiver room. We'd have enough variety in the receiver room to bring in a guy like Evan Ingram. But if he's going to get $7 to $10 million a year, if he's going to get long-term, that's a big old yikes for me. And I'm going to be shaking my head at Brandon Bean. What are your thoughts on Evan Ingram, Dave?
A lot of people will talk about, oh, he's injured all the time. He's only missed 1 game over the last 2 seasons. Now, it may seem like he's been injured. He's been non-existent because of the quarterback play he's had to deal with in New York, right? I know he's had issues with the drops in the past, right? So, Charles, I will say to your comment here, he's only missed 1 game in the last 2 seasons. So, or I should say he's appeared in 31 of the 32, or I should say 31 of the possible 33 games. So he has missed 2 games, regular season games, and they obviously haven't been in the playoffs. I like your idea of giving him a 1-year deal. Evan Ingram is the type of guy that he's not a rookie, so you're like wondering what to pay him on, right? We always talk about paying for potential. He has flashed, right? He has had moments where he's been a solid producer for the Giants, but I think there's going to be some hesitation from a lot of teams to give him big money, especially on a long-term deal. I would see it if I'm Evan Ingram to say, come in, look, there's not going to be as much pressure on me. I can be kind of the T2 behind a guy like Dawson Knox for 1 year and almost go the route of tight end that Mitchell Trubisky went at backup quarterback, right? Like show that you can do a little as the second tight end on a team, staying on the field in a productive offense. I mean, he's played nearly 80% of the snaps the past 3 years. So he's not going to get that type of snap count in Buffalo if he comes here, most likely. But he can still be a producer, right? We've seen the Bills really utilize the tight end more so with Dawson Knox's emergence this past year than they ever had before in the Josh Allen era. So there is room for Evan Ingram to be a factor on this team. And he could potentially parlay that then into a 2-3 year deal after 2022. I think if I'm Evan Ingram, if a team is willing to give me a 2 to 3 year deal with some nice guaranteed money, that's probably what I'm going to go for. But if the Bills are willing to offer him a 1 year pretty nice deal, let's say 5-6 million, he might take that. Yeah. But I'm kind of still on the fence with this whole idea of Evan Ingram. Kendall and I talked about this before. We both were kind of looking at more of the blocking tight end types as the T2 here. But I can wrap my head around it if the money is okay and it's a short-term deal. I can wrap my head around it.
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of people in the comment section, if you're not a big fan of Evan Ingram, like some people are in the comment section, your biggest hope right now is that Njoku off the market, Gesicki off the market. Your hope is that these tight ends off the market gets Evan Ingram overpaid somewhere else. I mean, when I first heard the report, I'm like, are the Bills just trying to like scare the Jets and to give him an extra $2-3 million? Like, that was my initial thought because I know Evan Ingram's been linked to the Jets as well. But now talking to some people, like I'm starting to feel like, no, this is a legit Buffalo Bills, a guy that is interested in the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills are interested in him. But Kendall, my biggest concern, I want to hear your thoughts on Evan Ingram, and I also want to hear your thoughts on this concern. What's your concern that signing a guy like Evan Ingram, if it's more than a 1-year deal, hurts your chances of re-signing Dawson Knox?
I feel like with the way that Evan Ingram has been in his career, obviously the health concerns at the start, the early breakout for him, and then just kind of coming back down to earth. I feel like if Bean is going to offer him a 2-year deal, I gotta imagine there isn't much tying him up to the team after year one. I gotta imagine it's built with that 1-and-1. It's that 1 year, second year option kind of thing where the Bills have every bit of leverage to just drop him for like $500,000 in dead cap in year 2. So I don't think if that were offered, Bean would do it irresponsibly. I think he knows what he's doing, and he knows that he would be adding a guy to this room for the upside that he is, but nothing more than that. And he doesn't want to overpay for that. And we always talk about how Bean, has his price and he sticks to it, and he's kind of stubborn in that way. And that's kind of why a lot of these off seasons have been kind of ho-hum, but we've been building methodically and consistently up to the core that we currently have. So I don't think he would do it irresponsibly. That's my final answer on that. But overall thoughts on Ingram. Yeah, I'm with you, Tilt. Like, there was a point, I mean, this whole time up until like me wrapping my head around it this afternoon, my thought process was T2 better be a blocking guy that has bonus as a pass catcher. And now I'm kind of, as I wrap my head around it, I'm like, why can't that TE2 be the receiving guy and Knox can be the blocking guy with upside as the pass catcher? Because we know how great he is as a pass catcher, but he really improved this past season as a blocker. So who's to say he's not more of the possession type of tight end in this offense, and Evan Ingram is the flashier guy, the receiving guy of the two. So I think it's interesting. It's very intriguing. I think we're all in agreement where we don't really want to see that deal done for more than like $6.5 million, like absolute tops for AAV, whether that's 1 or 2 years. But the thing that a lot of people are coming back to is like, would you rather have Ingram at 5 to 6 million, or would you rather have Gronk from 7 to 8 million? And I think that is kind of the disparity. And there's a reason to wonder about that, because I think obviously there's more proven commodity in Gronk, but there's also the injury concerns, the aging stuff. So, Bean has his price. Bean has his price for everyone. And he might have, like the report you were talking about the other day about how some players, we reach out to players, but no one really knows the extent to how much Bean is actually going into these conversations with these players and their reps. But Bills are going to get flagged for it.
You're doing so many you've been on so many shows this week, Kendall, that you just got me confused with Anthony. But I do appreciate. I'll take credit for it. That was an Anthony post.
For it. Well, either way, I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, we're going to get flagged for everything, and I think we were definitely interested in Gronk, but I think it was checking in to see the price. I think it was checking in to see the price tag, and I think the news about Evan Ingram tells us that that price tag might have been a little bit too much. Now we're checking in to see what that Evan Ingram price tag is.
And just back to the Dawson Knox thing. Greg Tomset was in the comment section here. I don't know if he's still here, but he made a great point in the Cover One group chat, and I'm going to share it just because they don't have a show till Wednesday, so I don't think I'm stealing anything from him. But you got to remember, Evan Ingram and Dawson Knox are good friends back from their days at Ole Miss.
Yeah, I don't know 2 years together at Ole Miss.
2 years together. So, one of the things that we like to knock Dawson Knox on was his drops early on in his career. But if Dawson Knox and Evan Ingram are so tight, and Dawson Knox can sort of share those secrets that he utilized to improve his catching, maybe him and Evan Ingram can get together in the offseason, work out together, and Evan Ingram can improve that aspect of his game as well. And if it's a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal, it takes tight ends a little bit, to develop. Like, not everyone could be Kyle Pitts and be an impact player right away. And even Kyle Pitts was an impact from a different position. He was practically a slot receiver this year. It takes tight ends a little bit to develop. So tight end is one of my positions, and it's an unpopular take. I posted this on Twitter today, and a lot of people were like, I don't think I agree with you. But my take is tight end for this team this offseason, it's sign one, draft one. Because I really have no faith in Tommy Sweeney to be anything more than like a break glass in case of emergency tight end number 3. I don't like the upside of a Tommy Sweeney. Whereas, you're sitting there in the 4th or the 5th round, there's a guy like Daniel Bellinger, right, Dave, who we talked about as a great blocker, who is also an incredible athlete, a 9.9 something RAS score, who really went to school at San Diego State, so never really had a chance to develop as a receiver. You get a chance to maybe sign Evan Ingram, draft Daniel Bellinger, and you can bring Daniel Bellinger along slowly. And you can develop him so that when Evan Ingram walks and goes and gets his bag in a year or 2 years, you still have Dawson Knox on his re-upped contract, and you have Daniel Bellinger with 2 years in term left on his rookie deal. So you could be using Evan Ingram as sort of a buffer for drafting a middle round rookie, because this is a pretty deep tight end class.
Mhm.
I like a lot of the tight ends in this class. So one of them should be slipping into the 4th, 5th round for us to grab and take a fly around as a TE3 behind these two guys as well. So I see nothing but upside in Evan Ingram as long as it doesn't go above $6 million and as long as there's no term. If there is, I will quickly change my attitude here on this. But let's shift now, and we're going to continue on with tight ends. But hey, let's say this Evan Ingram thing falls through. Evan Ingram's like, hey, Buffalo, I really like the conversations we had. Seems like a great fit, but the Jets are offering me 3 years, $30 million. Like, okay, bye. We're not giving you that. So say Evan Ingram is not an option on the table. Who would be some options for the Buffalo Bills? So our homework assignment was to come up each with sort of 2 players that we would consider fits for the Buffalo Bills at the tight end position. Dave, I'm going to start with you. Who are the 2 guys that you saw as fits? Now, our homework assignment was, one maybe middle tier guy to one like more sort of bargain bin guy, but we made like a little bit of an exception at tight end, and we mostly all just have mid tier guys because we all saw the Thomas contract out there, Ian Thomas contract in Carolina. Yeah. We saw Lee Smith get paid like $9 million. Like tight ends just get paid in free agency. That's what happens. So who are your 2 sort of mid tier free agents who the Buffalo Bills could possibly pursue if this Evan Ingram thing doesn't work out? Because I think the Bills want to be a little bit more versatile and go a little bit more 12 personnel.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we'll also let it be known that we did our best to try to not overlap with each other. So if you hear a guy that someone mentions, it's likely someone we all like, but we're trying to diversify.
Yeah, I erased like 4 of you. I erased like 4 of your names because we already had them, Dave.
Thanks. So I'll go with Tyler Conklin, right? I think that Tyler Conklin can almost be like a consolation prize if you don't get an Evan Ingram, right? He's an athletic, more athletic tight end, more on the athletic side as a tight end. He really had a nice season in 2021 as an option for Kirk Cousins when all of the attention, most of the national media attention was going to, rightfully so, to guys like Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Tyler Conklin quietly put together a really nice season for the Vikings. And he's not a spectacular run blocker, but he's kind of, to me, in the same mold as an Evan Ingram, where he's that athletic. He's not as athletic as Ingram, so don't get me wrong, but he would be a nice piece to have as almost like a true TE2 that can fill like all the needs that you have from a tight end. Like he's not just going to be pigeonholed into one type of role as a TE2. He can block. He's not great, but he can do it. He can go out and catch. He's got a big frame. And he really has good hands and proved to be a pretty good red zone option for the Vikings with the touchdowns he had in 2021. So I know Greg likes Tyler Conklin. I wonder what his type of price tag is going to be. I can't imagine it would be anything more than $5 million a year. I would imagine it might be in like
I think he's in the what we think Ingram is worth range. I think he's in the 5-6 AV range.
Yeah, maybe so. Like I would be comfortable. I would be comfortable giving Tyler Conklin like a two-year $10 million deal. Like I would be comfortable with that.
Tyler Conklin is a guy who caught a touchdown pass from Josh Allen in the Senior Bowl. Never forget.
There you go.
Never forget. So there's another tight end that caught a touchdown pass from Josh Allen in the Senior Bowl. His name is Durham Smythe, and he's on my list. I'll get to him in a little bit. But sorry, you had a comment you want to make there?
No, I was just gonna say then my other option, if we're just gonna go with both of our options here, is a guy who has proven that he can be a very good TE2 in the league, and that's Hayden Hurst, a guy I know Randy will like. He is not a good run blocker. I will say that is a big knock on him. He's not the best run blocker. And he's not even really he's not a good blocker overall. I'll just say that he's going to be your receiving threat TE2. Falcons are one of the worst rushing teams in the league last year, but 2 years ago when he was de facto TE1, he played pretty well. And then last year the Falcons went out and they drafted Kyle Pitts, and in the games, even with Kyle Pitts there, Hayden Hurst did catch a couple touchdowns last year. So I think he could be a serviceable TE2, but what you're getting out of him. It's going to be the more athletic receiving type. It's not really going to be the blocking type. So again, I do think that he will be reasonably, like, he will not cost you a ton, right? He will be probably under $2 million a year to bring in.
Kendall, how about you? Who are some tight ends that you got? Your first one here really interests me because it's one that we haven't really talked about yet. Who are some tight ends that you have interest in?
I mean, I threw it on there because it was the higher end of the spectrum. Like, I want Robert Tonyan in a bad way. I just don't think it's possible at all. I think obviously with Rodgers going back to the Packers, I think he's going to want to go back and reunite himself with Aaron Rodgers. And I think that's the end of the conversation there. But hell, if that's not going to happen, I'm really interested in him. Super athletic tight end, sufficient blocker, kind of like Hayden Hurst. It's not that bad, but it's nothing you're like depending on him to do. He's an athletic tight end, definitely good with the ball in his hands. Sufficient route runner, can get open and separate. So he's an exciting guy. He's probably not going to be in the price range, nor will he consider the Bills, knowing he has a contender in Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. So I think he's going back to Green Bay as is, but I've had interest in him for a while. I'm pretty sure he was an RFA last year, obviously was brought back, and now he's a UFA. But I think because he got injured this year, he might be a little bit more attainable in terms of price. But like I said, I think he's going back to Green Bay.
Jason, well, before you get to your next one, Jason Taylor came in and said, is OJ Howard a free agent? Yes, he is a free agent. Obviously, former first-round pick. He would be up there probably on the list of guys maybe that the Buffalo Bills could consider as a TE2, or at least we as fans would have interest in as a TE2. Howard, Ingram, Mo Alley Cox, and David Njoku were all on my list of like 4 guys who I thought were going to get paid based off of their potential, and I thought they would be priced out of the Bills' range. But it appears like maybe possibly I was wrong on Evan Ingram. We'll find out on Monday. And in his mock-off season, Joe Buscaglia had the Buffalo Bills signing OJ Howard to like a rather modest, like 1-year, $4 million deal. I know Joe Marino on his Locked On Bills podcast 2 days ago, when he was doing his offensive free agent preview, mentioned OJ Howard as sort of like a lower mid-tier free agent. So maybe I'm overvaluing OJ Howard. He just seems like a guy who's going to get paid for his upside, but Howard is a significant possibility. He's not on any of our lists, but he's a significant possibility. You had a comment on that, Kendall?
Well, I was just going to say I was just going to say on OJ Howard, like, I don't know that like people are going to pay him for his potential at this point, because he's been in the league for a number of years now,
and
right?
He's been a bust. He has underperformed everything.
Takes plays off, which is a real negative.
So I think maybe he's kind of past that post-hype sleeper stage of his career at this point. I think he is what he is at this point. But
at this point, he's a reclamation project.
Right. I agree.
Nature's Reflection comes in and says, albeit depending on Dorsey's scheme, McDermott's fixation with running the ball, should we look at a blocking tight end or blocking first tight ends as opposed to catching first tight ends? I would say you're probably looking in today's NFL, you're looking for a mix of both. I don't think the Bills are looking for Lee Smith 2.0.
Right.
I think they're looking for someone who's going to give you pop doing both. Someone
you don't want to get a Lee Smith. You don't want to get a Lee Smith, because then when you have a Lee Smith, teams know, you're not passing the ball more than 90% of the, or 10% of the time when he's on the field.
You want to have that variance where you can be versatile and you can throw out of those 12 personnel sets. That's something that you want to have the versatility to do. So, none of these guys on our list, and honestly, not even a lot of guys on the free agent list. Most of these guys on the free agent list are pretty like 50-50, 60-40, 40-60. Like they're guys who could do a little bit of both. It should be interesting. Kendall, who is your second guy? Because I think your second guy. You guys did a BF film room on him. Joe Marino mentioned him as like pretty much his favorite on his podcast 2 days ago. This guy right here seems to be like one of the guys that Bills Mafia seems to prefer the most. but also seems like a guy who might get paid in free agency. Who is the guy that the next guy on your list here?
Yeah. That last guy is Will Dissly. He seems like the perfect cross section between everything that we want, price, interest, skill set, archetype, all of that stuff. It just seems to just really fit what the Bills need. Everyone talking about how we want our TE2 to be a blocking guy. That's kind of what you're gonna get. He's Mr. Ho-hum, Mr. Dependable. You know what you're gonna get from him. He may not surprise you and give you more than that, but he'll do what he's expected. And that's kind of what you're getting in Will Dissly. And because of that, he probably will get paid because he is Mr. Dependable. You know what you're going to get from him. So that's why he makes so much sense as a TE2 option. Go back and check out our film room on him. Eric does a great job breaking him down. But yeah, he's a good blocker, and he is surprising with the ball in his hand once he catches it. He really does surprise you, and he can get some more yards than what's just right there in front of him. So he's a solid option. I actually didn't check the market value on him, but I would expect him to be under the Ingram value, probably in the 3 to 4 area.
Yeah.
The thing with tight ends is you're paying them to be a pass catcher and a run blocker. So you need them to be sufficient enough in both areas where they deserve the money. Like, even if he is a ho-hum guy, he deserves 3 to 4.
Pretty much any tight end in the league just has to point to the contract that Oakland, or not Oakland. Yeah, technically they were Oakland back then. Oakland gave Lee Smith.
Right.
Like, what, 3 years, $9 million, $3 million?
How about what the Panthers just gave
Ian Thomas? Yeah.
Yeah.
Spin came in and said Lee Smith is the greatest player in history, all caps, at getting separation when he runs routes. My argument here is he's the greatest at getting separation when he runs routes because no one thinks he's actually going to run them, and no one covers him. The number of times he was wide open on a play is Buffalo Bills kind of surprising.
That's literally the thing I was saying. It's like you're expecting a run with him, and that's almost like the upside to having Lee Smith. No one's going to cover it.
My list here quickly. Obviously, I had the alpha of the list. I had Rob Gronkowski. He checks every box, right? This is a guy who can work the middle of the field. He can do stuff on the boundary. He's a red zone threat. He's a mauler in the running game. You'd have to obviously check in with it, make sure it's good. You don't want executive decision and then, cause an issue locker room. Bills Mafia fan base who are more loose to the side. And then there's also a bunch of people in Bills who are do this type of player that'll put on the top. I'm in that section of Bills right now where, says Gronk's not going to demand a lot of money. It's going to be interesting, right? Like, always play with Brady his whole career. He wanted to play with Brady. He sort of flirted with the Bills last year. I think I told the Bills, like, hey, for like $1 million, I'll come to you. And they were like, no. So he's like, all right, I'm just going to go back to my boy, Tom Brady. But Tom Brady's gone. And Gronk's like, I got back into football shape and left me. Like, do I retire again? Do I go back to the Buccaneers, who has Blaine Gabbert as their quarterback? Like, what do I do with Gronk? Maybe Gronk's price comes down. Maybe you can get Gronk for $7-8 million AAV on your deal. If you're the Buffalo Bills, do you fit that in the budget? I would. So Gronk would be my number one bullet. My runner up here is I'm sort of going for that bottom feeder, a guy you could probably get for $2-3 million. He's got that stigma of Notre Dame tight end. Durham Smith is a guy that had a good Josh Senior Bowl touchdown from him. He's blocked 12 now his whole career there. He's been Mike Gesicki's roommate in the 12 months, so he's got plenty of experience blocking, and he's doesn't himself out as a pass catcher. Apparently, I got some audio issues. I do apologize for that. I'm gonna power through it. I gotta get the NordVPN Kendall here, but big of Gronk. Some other guys on the list: Dwelly, Matt Williams, Kyle Rudolph. Are all guys the Buffalo Bills might consider here. But yeah, with my wife, so I do apologize for that. If I am coming through not so hot, to turn off the Wi-Fi on our devices here just to maybe improve my.
I love the Wi-Fi.
This is George's punishment for stealing like the best tight end free agents.
Yeah, he filled out he filled out the sheet first, so he got the best picks of all the free agents.
Yeah. All right, I'm just going to leave it to you guys to move on now and talk about the next topic. So you guys talk a little bit about. It looks like I'm not getting any bars, but you guys talk a little bit about offensive guards.
All right, fair
What
enough.
did he say? Offensive what?
I think he said guards, so I'm gonna roll with it.
All right, cool.
So my first guy at offensive guard, it's kind of interesting now with guard too, because of obviously the cutting of John Feliciano. I think this is now a position where we were talking about with tight end. It's sign one, draft one. This is definitely one where you're sign one, draft one. We need to find a way to sign a guy to make sure Bean isn't, reaching for an interior offensive lineman in the first round, and he feels comfortable enough with what's on the roster to let someone fall to him and instead of going reaching for one. So we're going to have to shore up the depth at that position regardless. So my ho-hum kind of bargain-ish guy is, I guess I have two guys now that I'm looking at it. I have two guys that are kind of both upper tier, I guess. My first one is Connor Williams. He's upper tier because he's younger.
Yep.
He hasn't been anything like really special that the Cowboys are really trying to retain in any way. But he's been good. He's been a part of that rushing attack for the Cowboys. They've been so successful with their ground game. I'm pretty sure he'll be like 25 years old at the start of next season. He's well-versed in zone run blocking, which we know is a theme that we're projecting to be a big part of the 2022 Buffalo Bills with Aaron Kromer at the helm. So that's why I project Connor Williams to be a nice fit in that way. I will double check his valuation, but I got to imagine it's going to be inflated because of his youth. Simply because of how young he is. He's 25 years old currently. And because of that, teams are going to pay for the upside. Teams are going to pay for the fact that he's still kind of a ball of clay, and you can get something out of him in that way more than what he's already given the Cowboys. Over the cap has him around like $8 million. AAV,
I was going to ask you what you thought.
Rich.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought Connor's market would be, because I feel like, I think he could get somewhere around 7-8 million a year based on his age and his potential.
I think it's realistic. I mean, coming out of a program like Texas and then playing for the Cowboys when they've had so much success running the football, it makes sense being 25 years old too. It makes sense. Someone's going to take a chance on that and overpay for that. But at the same time, teams could be scared off by it. If they're all watching the tape and they all see the same thing, they could be scared off by it. There's a lot of guards in this free agent class, and he could just be someone that loses musical chairs for whatever reason. I don't see that happening, but he might lose musical chairs in a way where he has to take a little bit lesser of a contract than he was expecting. And if he's looking at, like what we just cut Mongo's deal from, I'd be perfectly fine giving him that same contract because, Mongo was 29 years old or whatever, and we kind of knew what he was. This is kind of the other side of it where what he's been, but there's something more there that we may be able to break into. So I think there's appeal in that way. And then my second guy is that Carolina connection, that Bean connection. It's Trey Turner. And Trey Turner's an interesting one because he, kind of like Evan Ingram, was someone who started off really strong in his career. Really early on, he had a great career, doing great things in Carolina, and then goes on to the Chargers after, fizzling out a little bit at the tail end of Carolina, and kind of fizzles out more while he's with the Chargers, and then finds himself in Pittsburgh last year. And that was a just interesting situation. They needed help on their offensive line. He did sufficiently in the run game, helped out Najee Harris, but he wasn't even asked to pass block. You don't get asked to pass block in that offense because they get rid of the ball in 1.5 seconds. So it's tough to evaluate his tape from that perspective. But he's another guy where he's 29 years old, and you're thinking, 29 years old for a guard isn't necessarily old. You still have gas in the tank, and you have good years under your belt. So he might be another guy who's in the 7 to 8 million range. So I think that's a little bit rich. I guess I picked both guys that are just kind of on the rich side, but there aren't a lot of guys that I'm all that crazy about, especially ones that you guys didn't already select. So I'll pass the torch over to you guys so you can get into more of the realistic bargain bin type guys to enable us to continue drafting at that position as well.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're clean.
I'm back. I'm clean. All right.
You're clean. You're clean.
Yeah, I wanted to transition to guard next because that was the big, news in Bill's world outside of the Evan Ingram stuff was John Feliciano was released. There was some reports that came out, sort of one source said one thing, another source said another in terms of whether the Bills asked John Feliciano to take a pay cut. Apparently, from what happened was Brandon Beane let it be known to John Feliciano's agent that the Buffalo Bills were not willing to bring him back at his current price tag. And John Feliciano's agent made it clear to the Buffalo Bills that for some reason, despite the fact that he's not a very good football player, he would not take a pay cut. So John Feliciano found his way to being cut by the Buffalo
For all we know,
Bills.
sorry, I should have added this.
Yeah.
For all we know, he could be a guy that tests the market, doesn't get what he wants, and he's right on his way back.
AJ Klein could be that guy
Exactly.
as well. But so for right now on the depth chart, it's Darrell Williams and it is Cody Ford, and Jacob Capra. So to me, my number one free agent with the bullet is getting Ryan Bates back in the fold.
Yep.
I don't even want to tender him. I want to give him an extension. And I've made that pretty clear on previous episodes. I want to lock him up to term. I would give him a 3-year, $6 to $9 million contract, somewhere between $2 and $3 million a year AAV, because I think even if he's not your starting left guard, he's got right guard flex and he's got center flex. So you can still develop him to be your center of the future as well. He's a guy who can play all three interior positions, just like John Feliciano could have. And if you sign him up to that $3 or so million AAV, it's at half the price of John Feliciano. So to me, number one with the bullet is getting Ryan Bates back here. Then the question becomes Darrell Williams. Do you pay him right tackle money to play right guard? You probably ask him to take a pay cut. I really like the idea of utilizing Darrell Williams as trade bait, because if there is a team out there, plenty of teams are in need of quality offensive linemen. There's got to be a team out there who still looks at Darrell Williams, his contract, and thinks that's a quality right tackle right there that I can get under term. And you could probably get a 4th or a 5th round draft pick for him. I would really consider, I know the popular take right now is running our offensive line back and adding depth. I would seriously consider with some of the names on the market. You have Aaron Cromer's guy, Roger Saffold, was just cut by the Tennessee Titans today. Now, did he have the greatest year ever? No. Has he 100% lived up to that contract in Tennessee? No. But he had some of his best years under Aaron Cromer. You bring in a guy like Roger Saffold, half the price of Darrell Williams. You bring in a guy like Austin Blythe, who missed last year with an injury, but had 2 really successful years with the LA Rams. You have all of a sudden Ryan Bates, Austin Blythe, Roger Saffold. You draft a guy, and you're the Buffalo Bills, and you feel pretty confident about the interior of that offensive line and that Aaron Cromer can make things work. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit too confident in Aaron Cromer, but to me, guys like Roger Saffold, Austin Blythe, Ryan Bates, that's where I'm shooting. I'm not shooting for the Brandon Scherfs or the Connor Williams and stuff of the world. I just don't know roster construction wise if that's the move I want this Buffalo Bills team to make. But I do know that good teams do that. You saw Joe Thuney signing with the Kansas City Chiefs for a buttload of money last year. So, Dave, what are your thoughts? Who are some guys that you have on your list?
Yeah, I mean, I really went to kind of the bargain bin here, right? And so the guy that I've mentioned before on the show, and I don't even really know how to say his name properly, is Jermaine Illuminor from the Las Vegas Raiders. And he's a free agent. He played he played a decent amount of snaps last year for them. He played I don't know why this is not working for me right now, but I had it right here. Here we go. 266 offensive snaps, graded out as a 67 grade pass blocker and just over 52 run blocker. Overall 59.8 grade from PFF, which isn't great, but would have been the highest rated guard on the Raiders, ignoring minimum snap count. So again, he's a guy that's going to be a bargaining guy. Is he a fit? I don't know, right? He's a bigger guy. He might be more of a fit for a man, a gap, man power type scheme, but he's a bargain, likely to be a bargain free agent with some upside and is younger. The guy that maybe the Bills would take maybe a closer look at that could be like this year's version of John Feliciano will be Mark Lewinsky from the Colts, right? Over the cap has him projected somewhere around $3 million a year. He's coming off a contract that was very similar to John Feliciano's, like a 3-year, $16 million contract. He's a UFA now. He's 29. Colts are obviously one of the best running teams in the league last year. And I think now that he's 29, you maybe could get him on a 2-3-year deal for $3 million a year, which I would be totally fine with. Shore up that guard spot on the line. But Steve, I'm with you, man. I think priority one right now has to be to tender Bates, bring him back, and then see what you can do, see what your options are with Darrell Williams, right? Because I get the fact that people don't like Cody Ford, but he's cheap depth right now. That's how you have to look at him, right? You have to look at him as that. Yes, he's a bust. There's no way around it. He's a bust, but he's cheap depth right now. There's really no point in cutting him, especially after you've already cut Feliciano. So Illuminor, way off the radar bargain bin type guy, but Glowinski to me is a guy that is should be reasonably priced and graded out really well as a run blocker last year for PFF. So
yeah, the guy you had on the Google Doc that you went away from, Ronald Ringler brought up here. He said, Joseph,
well, he's tackle. He's tackle, right? So that's why I went away from him, because we were talking guards.
And that's the thing. Like, he's got the ability to kick inside. He knows Aaron Cromer. So, like, he would be like, everyone's looking at Austin Corbett. Austin Corbett. I mean, Joseph Noteboom is the guy the Bills could sign and kick inside. He could probably be a really good guard.
Love Noteboom. Yeah.
He's probably going to want to find a team that's going to play him at tackle.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's probably going to be his biggest market. Yeah. And where, like, even if he signs a shorter term deal, he could play his way into a bigger deal playing tackle. So I just think Noteboom's going to chase that tackle opportunity. Linebackers up next with the news of AJ Klein being released, saving a ton of cap space, $5 million. We don't even have on our list any free agents. We didn't.
Why?
On the notes.
You know why? Because now that AJ Klein's cut, we can look to the draft to replace him. You don't need to look to free agency to replace him. You already have everyone else under contract, all veterans. You can look to the draft to replace AJ Klein. Don't use precious cap dollars on more linebackers when you're already paying Tyler Matakevich, right? So
why are Bills fans even talking about Bobby Wagner? Like,
Tremaine Edmonds sucks.
Unless Tremaine Edmonds is actively off this roster. And I mean, Nate Geary put out an article today. There are a ton of different ways in which you could talk a Bills fan into getting rid of Tremaine Edmonds that makes sense. And this isn't some kind of like Tremaine Edmonds rah-rah podcast, but it's not going to happen. The Bills aren't going to do it. The Bills are not going to trade Tremaine Edmonds, no matter how much certain parts of the elements of the fan base want it to. No matter how much certain elements of the fan base were like, well, if they did it, I wouldn't care. I think it's a good idea. It's not going to happen. Like, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
I think he's more likely to get an extension this offseason than he is to get traded. So, like, Bobby, you're getting your hopes up for nothing when you talk about guys like Bobby Wagner. Like Dave said, like, this is such a deep draft class. Like, I mean, we talked about that combine. I railed off like 12 names that could go in the first
Bean's chance, after only drafting 2 linebackers in his entire stint with the Bills, one of them being Tremaine Edmonds, to put a stamp on drafting another linebacker this year now that AJ Klein's gone. We have the draft capital, 2 6, 2 7s. I'm not saying you got to sit there and draft Nakobe Dean, right? Like, I'm not saying that. Like, I'm just saying, like, 3rd round, 4th round comes around and you feel like there's a really high potential linebacker, or maybe Troy Anderson's sitting there or Chad Muma sitting there, and all of a sudden those guys are now in play as a potential option. And like you said, Steve, the draft class of linebacker, we didn't pay so much attention to it early, but now, like, as we dig into it, you can find a guy day 3.
Well, here's the thing is I'm looking at all these day 2 guys, and I'm doing my research on all these day 2 guys, and I'm hoping one of the day 2 guys slips into day 3.
Right.
You get a linebacker in the 4th round.
Right.
Yeah. Like, so that's your hope. Like, the more Troy Anderson moves up, the more like a Quay Walker moves up, the more another guy could move back. So it should be super interesting. Leo Chanel is putting his stamp with some really good pro days and good combine. Like I said, Tyndall and Walker, out of the shadow of the big beefy offensive or defensive linemen that were in front of them, are starting to represent Chad Muma. So guys are slipping, guys are dropping. Spin says Edmonds' deal is fully guaranteed. So how much dead cap would it be if we traded him? 0. You would save $12 million by trading him. All right. So moving on now to the next position here, and that's the quarterback carousel. I'm just gonna take 1 second here. I just want to
This guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle Allen has entered the chat.
Look like Neo, kind of.
Yeah, I
In the
need to take these off.
Matrix.
This looks ridiculous. I thought that would be cooler than it was, putting the sunglasses on as sort of like an own moment. But hey, I made that comment. Someone in the comment section mentioned Kyle Allen a couple of shows ago, and I was like, well, he's an RFA. And then I thought to myself, like, what if Washington doesn't tender Kyle Allen? And Kyle Allen didn't get tendered by the Washington Redskins. They announced today that he wasn't going to tender him. So Kyle Allen now enters the chat.
Why would you when you have the savior, Carson Wentz now?
Carson Wentz going to the Commanders. It's looking like maybe Jimmy G is going to go to the Colts. It's really not a great draft class.
To be in the NFC. No wonder Rodgers wanted to stay with the Packers.
Could get paid somewhere. So I don't know. Like, I look at a guy like Kyle Allen, who's now a free agent, and I said, like, Panther connection. You know, he was there in I think the last year of Bean, or at least Bean left, and he would have done homework on Kyle Allen, and the Panthers brought Kyle Allen in. Really good friends with Josh Allen, vacations with him, works out with him in the offseason, lives with him in California. And he's a backup quarterback who wouldn't, if he had to come in to play a game, wouldn't puke all over himself, like some of the other backup quarterbacks in the National Football League. To me, I mentioned this, he's probably twice the quarterback that like a Matt Barkley was. Is he the level of Mitch? No, but he's probably twice the level of what a guy like Matt Barkley was. So if you can get a guy like Kyle Allen for term, 2 years or 3 years, $6 million with incentives, if he actually makes his way onto the field, you could sell me on Kyle Allen to the Buffalo Bills as a long-term backup, as opposed to playing the quarterback carousel every year, because one of these years you're going to play the quarterback carousel and you're going to fall off, right? Like the ride is going to stop and there ain't going to be no seat. So it's risky to me. And especially this year with the draft class so poor, I don't know what quarterback is going to fall off. Like my list, number one on my list is Teddy Bridgewater. I think Teddy Bridgewater is the perfect new Mitch Trubisky. Come here for 1 year, maybe take a deal, $4 million, revitalize yourself, hit the market again next year. But Teddy Bridgewater is getting a little older. He might chase a team like the Saints or something, which he has a relationship with. He might get a deal, and then you start working your way down and down and down and down, and it's like eventually you end up at like Joe Flacco, and you're just like, man, what just happened?
You keep speaking Joe Flacco into existence.
Your boy says he's salty to see chickens traded for Locke. He wanted us to do that. So, hey, a little pricey, but I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on the quarterback carousel, the quarterback market? Are you content with the Kyle Allens of the world? I think Brandon Allen is another backup quarterback you can get on for term. All the Allens you can get for term. Or do you play the quarterback carousel game? Dave, what do you think?
Well, first I would just say this. Like, I think we need to put in perspective how fortunate we were to have Mitchell Trubisky as the backup at $2.5 million in 2021. That's not a normal circumstance. Okay. Like Mitchell Trubisky probably could have got more money. But he is going to get paid this year. So good for him playing the long game. And he didn't really even have to play a down to get it. So that's not realistic, right? I think the likes of Kyle Allen getting a 2-3 year deal to be the backup, I like it. Now you had Kyle Allen, so I'll go to Fitz, like Ronald says here. But it comes with a huge caveat, right? The price tag. Yeah. What is Ryan Fitzpatrick willing to come back to for another season when we know he's got like 8 kids at home or whatever he's got? Family, whatever. We know
the body did not look like an NFL body, by the way. When he had his shirt off.
But we also know he's not opposed to bouncing around the country and playing quarterback for all these different teams because he's played for like half the NFL at this point. My whole point on Fitz is I think he's a good fit as a backup, but the question is the price tag. Is he willing to take $3 million to be the backup quarterback for the Bills? And I'm not so sure. Is he willing to hang it up and not play when he's actually made a shit ton of money in his career? Is that $3 million to play one more season going to be worth it to him? Or is it going to be more worth it to him to either retire and be with his family or find a place where someone's willing to pay him $6-7 million to potentially, again, unseat some starting quarterback that another team has, because that's what he does. So I like the idea of Fitz as a fit. It's just a matter of price tag for me. But philosophically, I'm with you, Steve. I don't want to play the quarterback carousel. I'd rather get a guy like Kyle Allen for 2-3 years, much like the Colts did with Jim Sorgi in years past, like the Chiefs did with Chase Daniel
Ooh, Jim
previously.
Sorgi bomb.
I'm just saying, like, that when they had Manning, they never had to worry about it, right? Like, it was just Jim Sorgi holding the clipboard for 16 games.
Can I say this? And this is, I don't think this has been brought up yet. I don't know. I'm going to go look up his contract situation. You know, a quarterback who could end up on the market when all is said and done? Could Nick Foles end up on the market? That could be an interesting name as well. I'm going to go check his contract status, but he's still under contract with the Bears. But Nick Foles would be another guy. Like,
that was a terrible contract, wasn't it?
Yeah, but like, it's just like, no one's mentioning Darnold because it's going to be really hard for the Carolina Panthers to get out of that contract. But I mean, we just saw the Bears eat all that dead money today for Khalil Mack, so who knows? But no one's really mentioning Darnold because of that contract. But hey, if the Carolina Panthers go and they trade for Deshaun Watson, I think they're going to eat that dead cap and get rid of Sam Darnold. So then Sam Darnold enters the equation. But if you're the Buffalo Bills, how long do you want to wait to address Mitch Trubisky was the first free agent.
And you don't have anyone else this year. You had Davis Webb as a fallback last year. You don't have that this year.
No one. Our roster is Josh Allen, and then the backup quarterback right now is Ken Dorsey. Like, that's the backup quarterback right now. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, Mitch Trubisky was the first dude. People forget, first guy. That was the first announced signing of the Buffalo Bills last year. I wouldn't be surprised if backup quarterback is the first guy signed again this year. You're like, we're not in the room, right? Like, we're sitting here talking about how the quarterback carousel operates. And when the music stops playing, let's see who's left without a chair. The Buffalo Bills behind the scenes are like, hey, Andy Darnold. Hey, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Hey, Teddy Bridgewater. Hey, Jacoby Brissett. Are you guys sick of traveling the country every year, going from backup job to backup job with the opportunity to start every time someone like breaks their foot? Would you like to just come to like a nice, stable environment, collect a paycheck, and I don't know, quarterback the league's best offense if God forsaken anything happens to our starting quarterback? Would you like that? Oh, by the way, do you see this Mitch Trubisky guy about to get hella paid this offseason just because he just came here and held the clipboard? Like, if you're the Buffalo Bills, maybe you can convince a guy to come in on a short-term deal, or maybe you could convince a guy to come for term, right? Like, these are things that maybe you can do behind the scenes that, like, it's hard for us to prognosticate. Like, if we were to be like, yeah, the Buffalo Bills on the first day of free agency, they're going to sign Jacoby Brissett, 3 years, $9 million. They're going to lock him up to be their backup quarterback for the next 3 years. People in the comment section will be like, you're an idiot. That's never going to happen, right? Because we don't see what's going on behind the scenes. So, like, if one of me and you would have said last year, this time, 5 days before free agency opened, yeah, I think the Buffalo Bills backup quarterback's going to be Mitch Trubisky on a $2.5 million deal, we would have been laughed off of social media, right? Yeah. So it'll be super interesting to see how that backup quarterback plays out. But the names are the names. I think we've rattled them all off over the course of our 3 shows here. So let's move on now to what's the next position here? Running back. This is an interesting one. I think we as fans sort of, and there's the people out there who talk about, Christian McCaffrey, and there's the people out there who are like on the go trade for Saquon, go trade for. There's a small minority on that bandwagon within Bills Mafia, but I think for the most part, I think we as fans sort of have a hard time believing that this team is going to chase a running back, whether it's high in the draft or via the trade market or via free agency. But like, what if the Buffalo Bills have the same confidence in Aaron Kromer that we do, and the offensive line will fix itself simply by having a better coach? And what if the Buffalo Bills don't have the faith in Devin Singletary sort of that we think we do? Like, do you think there is any sliver of chance that on the first day of free agency, the Buffalo Bills sign Dave? The top of your list is Melvin Gordon, or the guy on your list is Melvin Gordon.
No,
the guy on my list is Leonard Fournette. Like, do you think
put
there's
him
a
there
chance?
because he's a free agent? I mean, like, I have 3 names, and I will tell you the 2 I have on the underneath are the 2 that I would want to talk about. I don't think there's a chance, given that how Devin Singletary ended the year, and given the fact that the Bills had to cut 2 guys with, I would say, decent contracts, $5 million, $3 million, just to get themselves in a situation where they're cap positive. I don't see a scenario where they go out and chase a big running back, right? I don't see them going out and chasing a Melvin Gordon or a playoff Lenny. Like, it doesn't seem to make financial sense to me. So I like Melvin Gordon, the player. I like Leonard Fournette, the player. I just don't like if the Bills had $60 million in cap space, cool, sure. But that's not the situation we're in right now. So I am all about going after a guy in free agency like we did last year with Breida, but I think a higher caliber guy this year, and going again back to the draft if we need to, because again, the jury's out for me on Zach Moss. I don't know what his future is going to be beyond 2022. I think he will be on the team this year, but beyond that, I don't know. Right. So I'm not opposed to a sign one, draft one situation here.
And here's the thing, like where I'm coming from. So the guy on my list was playoff Leonard Fournette. And I'm just trying to think outside the box of like something that like some situation we could find ourselves in on Monday. Just like I said, like no one expected the Buffalo Bills on the first day of free agency last year to go and sign Mitch Trubisky for $2.5 million. You know, I was doing a little bit of research on Leonard Fournette. I was reading some articles in years past. He's taken pay cuts in Tampa Bay to play with Tom Brady and to play on that offense. Tom Brady's gone. So if playoff Lenny is looking for the next team to take him to the postseason, listen, maybe he's done taking pay cuts and is just going to go get his bag this offseason, right? Or maybe he continues to take pay cuts. He's not my favorite running back in the world. I don't think he's got great vision, but he's an amazing athlete at running back. And there's a ton of things you could do with a guy like playoff Lenny. But maybe the Buffalo Bills do go out and they sign a guy like playoff Lenny. But if they sign Leonard Fournette, if they sign Melvin Gordon, then the conversation shifts to, what do you do with Devin Singletary? Because they don't mesh with Devin Singletary, right? Like you get Leonard Fournette, you get Melvin Gordon, you're paying them to tote the rock. Like you are paying them to tote the rock. So then it becomes, well, Devin Singletary is a UFA. What's his trade market next year? Like what can I get for Devin? So very small percentage, but I still think it's within the realm of possibility that you see the Buffalo Bills come out on Monday and throw a semi bag at a running back. I think it would be a mistake. And try to deal a guy like Devin Singletary, draft a guy in the middle rounds and have Leonard Fournette and Rashad White, have Leonard Fournette and Brian Robinson. Like I can see it. I can see a situation where that occurs as small a percentage as it is. I just want to throw it out there into the sphere so I can go back and record this if it does in fact happen, and we'll forget it.
Strike it from the regular, but if it doesn't,
it's called the Colin Cowherd method. Kendall, I think the guy on your list is the most realistic of the name free agents. Talk a little bit about Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, I love Chase Edmonds and the idea of him fitting in this offense. He's right on the precipice of being too expensive and like just enough of an investment where you could keep him on the team at the same time as Singletary and not have to feel bad about paying someone so much to not be RB1A. Like he could absolutely be RB change of pace at $5 million, which is pricey. I don't know if I would prefer to do this, but I like the idea of adding a change of pace runner like Chase Edmonds to this offense, someone who can run in zone really comfortably, who's faster, has more explosiveness than Devin Singletary, and has a bit more breakaway speed, but he's also a great receiving back, like absolutely great receiving back. That's probably the best area of his game. And the way he transitions from a pass catcher back into that running back is just outstanding. So he's kind of that absolute limit for me where I'd be okay with the spending in free agency at that position. And he'd also be a guy for me where if we got that guy, I'm not drafting a guy at running back. He would cross that off the list. I would feel okay with it being Edmonds, Singletary, and Moss, and depending on those three guys to figure it out through the year. I feel like they all complement each other in their own ways.
Yeah. I mean, in reality, what we're looking at in free agency is probably going to be some version of like the Bills version this year of Matt Breida, where they're going to look for a veteran who's got some different traits to bring a different answer in the room. I know a ton of people have been talking about Ronald Jones, but that's not different traits to me than Devin Singletary or Zach Moss. My guy on my list was JD McKissick. I like him as a third down back, as a receiver. I think he brings I can envision a role for him in this offense. Devin Singletary on first and second down, JD McKissick on third down. Using Zach Moss in the red zone. Like I can envision how the running backs would be utilized in that situation. Signing a guy like JD McKissick also does not preclude you from drafting a running back. You draft Rashad White beats out JD McKissick. You can just cut JD McKissick. Like that's sort of the guy we're looking at here. I think Raheem Mostert falls into that category. I think who knows how much money Mostert's going to look for. I think you can probably get Raheem Mostert might be a little bit above like the Breida level. I think you might have to go up to pony $3-4 million to get a guy like Raheem Mostert. But Dave, who are some of the guys that you had two guys on your list of just that interest you as sort of these, like, I don't want to call them bottom feeders but sort of bargain bin guys who can fill a role. Kenny Riggleman comes in, says James White. That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, I've liked the Chiefs guys, Darrell Williams and Jared McKinnon, but I don't know how, like, Jared McKinnon's probably more of a fit than Darrell Williams is, just because he's played in that San Francisco and Minnesota system and the zone heavy running scheme. But I really will come back to the guy I mentioned on previous show, and Damian Williams. Very comfortable in his own scheme, excellent pass blocker and pass protection on third downs. Isn't going to cost you a ton. He's coming off a nice, I'll say a nice season with the Bears in where he had to fill in for David Montgomery. He acquitted himself nicely. He can catch the ball a little bit. And I think he's just an all around pretty good back. I do think he's better. He would be better than what we got out of Matt Breida last year. So to me, if you're talking about veteran guy that you feel like can come in and actually, contribute, guys like Damian Williams or Jerick McKinnon kind of are on my list, my short list of guys who would be a scheme fits, and also really, really good in pass protection, both of those guys. So we saw McKinnon come on very late for the Chiefs during the playoffs. And Damian Williams, if you go back and watch some of the games he played in last year when Montgomery was out, he actually looked pretty solid. And both guys still under age 30. And I think both would be great fits.
Yeah. All right. So again, running back, there are names. I mean, so, if we could sit here and we could try to name them all and try to guess the person the Buffalo Bills are going to sign, but that's what Monday and Thursday, those are the reaction shows. So we'll react. That's the one thing I'm trying to do this year is not just sit here and try to list them all. We're going to move on, and we're going to move on now to Marlon Mack. Was someone who mentioned a couple times in the comment section. I don't personally like him that much, mostly because I don't think he's very versatile. I don't think he gives you much value as a third down back. I don't think he gives you much value as a pass blocker. I don't think he gives you much value as a receiver. I think he's very much a first, second down speed back. I just don't see much value in a guy like Marlon Mack. Titus comes in and says Philip Lindsay. That's a guy I wanted when he was sort of like released and he went to Miami. Duke Johnson is another one I like. Sort of those just bottom of the barrel, like Matt Breida 2.0. You sign them and you hope they click. Like last year, the Bills signed Matt Breida. It clicked for like a game or two. It didn't for the other 16. The Chiefs signed Jerick McKinnon. It clicked for like a game or two. It just happened for them to be like in the playoffs. So kudos to them. Like people don't realize that Jerick McKinnon didn't do jack shit until week 17. He had a big week 17 and then a big.
And we liked him last offseason as a free agent, if you remember.
Yeah, and he was on that list of bottom of the barrel guys.
Yep.
James Conner's another interesting guy too. I'm just.
I don't see that as a.
He was more effective in Arizona than Edmonds was, so he'd be more expensive than even Edmonds.
All right, so wide receiver now, and this is an interesting one. I want to throw a little shout out to our man Kyle Knapp, formerly of the Knapp Knows Buffalo podcast. He made a great comment the last couple of days. Me and you are still in a group chat with him, and he was on a show with Justice yesterday, and he was talking about how the Buffalo Bills, if they do decide to move on from Cole Beasley, we don't need to look to replicate Cole Beasley. The Buffalo Bills can look to find something different in their wide receiver room. It doesn't have to be that possession-y type of receiver that Cole Beasley is. I know for me, like I'm very OCD. I like structure. Like on this show, I like to move from one segment to the next. I like my wide receiver room the same way. Like I like my wide receiver room to be structured. And I really sort of like the flow the Buffalo Bills had last year. It was Diggs. It was Davis. You had that inside-outside flex guy in Emmanuel Sanders. You had that slot guy in Cole Beasley. You had that gadget speed slot guy in Isaiah McKenzie. Like it was just all these different traits, and they sort of just melded together really well. But now Sanders is gone. Now Beasley's possibly gone. Now McKenzie's gone. And it's going to be hard to just replicate those three traits and bring that same type of wide receiver room back together. There was a comfort level that I had with that wide receiver room. that comfort level could be gone. There could be a shock to my system, and the Buffalo Bills could go in a different direction with this receiver room. We're already seeing it with Evan Ingram. So the Buffalo Bills could look to go in some different ways here in the wide receiver room. So like my list is super bland. My wide receiver was Braxton Berrios because I think he can do a little bit of what Isaiah McKenzie did and a little bit of what Cole Beasley did in the slot. And that makes me feel nice and warm and fuzzy inside. And the other guy on my list was James Washington because I think he can do some of that down the field stuff that Emmanuel Sanders had success with the Buffalo Bills like last year. And that makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. What do you guys think? Who are some free agents? Kendall, I've been going to Dave every time. I'll start with you, Kendall. Who are some wide receivers that interest you? Because you got a really interesting. I know you were, again, throwing some darts at the wall, just looking for something new, but you had an interesting name here at the top of your list.
Yeah, so this is obviously the one that's, would shock everyone, the more pricey of the two options. I saw Juju Smith-Schuster, and I thought, there's something here with this. The Chiefs were reportedly in on him in terms of being free agent suitors for him. Why wouldn't the Bills be suitors for him? Keep your fastball, keep that wide receiver threat, allow yourself to play 11 personnel if that is the choice that they so choose. But the thing with Schuster is obviously he's been underwhelming since like Antonio Brown leaving Pittsburgh. And I think the big thing with him is that he thrived when he wasn't option number one. And if you bring him to Buffalo, he isn't option number one. When he was option one in Pittsburgh, he wasn't even operating primarily on the boundary. He was actually operating more as a big slot kind of guy. And he was pretty good at it. But we've talked about this Pittsburgh offense. It's limiting in a lot of ways, especially as Big Ben aged. It limited what Juju could do. And it's not like he's some transcendent talent at the position, but obviously similar to a lot of the guys I've actually been talking about now that I'm thinking about it, he popped early in his career and he's kind of faded back down to the mean. And because of that, you might be able to get him at a discount. And I think there will definitely be teams that shop for him because of the name that he is and the early production that he had. But I think he would fit into this wide receiver room in the way that you're talking about, Judge, where you want some diversity on this offensive position. You want them all to be able to do different things. And at the same time, you want them all to be able to do similar things. You want them all to be versatile. You want them all to be able to play in the slot and on the boundary. You don't necessarily want to pigeonhole yourself to a slot only guy, kind of like Knapp was saying. You don't need a 1-for-1 replacement, someone who can beat zones only in the slot position. You want someone who can do a little bit of everything. And I think Juju is that, and he would allow us to keep our fastball in that way. So he's very intriguing for me. I don't know if it's something I would like totally get behind, but that's one of those high-end names where I could see it fitting, I could see it working out, and I could see it bringing the best out of Juju.
And who's the other guy on your list? Because the other guy on your list kind of makes me feel a little bit warm and fuzzy inside because he reminds me a little bit of Cole Beasley. Who's this next guy on your list?
So the next guy is Jamison Crowder. He was just released by the Jets. And the second I saw that, I was like, this dude would be a perfect fit for if Beasley moves on and if we trade Beasley. I think he's a great slot receiver with sneaky yards after the catch ability. He's not the speediest guy in the world, but the dude knows how to separate and run routes, get open. He's been doing it for years with poor quarterback play. Poor quarterback play in Washington, then New York. But he gets open and he keeps having production. If anyone plays fantasy football and you've been a Jamison Crowder owner, you've been striking value year after year, year after year. So that's the thing with Jamison Crowder. He's one of those sneaky slot guys that just keeps producing. And I think he's someone we'll be able to get sub 4 million AAV. And I see no reason to move on from Beasley and find someone that's a fraction of the cap hit and will give you around the same production.
And like I said, it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. One of the things that I've been doing over the last couple of days is, like I said, I liked the Bills receiver core last year. I would be happy to run back the same exact receiver core. I would be completely content with Davis taking on a bigger role and being the clear-cut wide receiver 2, Diggs, Sanders is the inside-outside boundary, receiver number 4, Beasley working in the slot, McKenzie being the guy. I would be so comfortable rolling that back. So I'm like, all right, if we can't roll that back, who can replace who to sort of mold all that together? Beasley, Jamison Crowder was the first name I looked at. A poor man's Beasley would be like an Adam Humphries. I looked at like maybe a Beasley iMac hybrid. That was Braxton Berrios, right? Someone in here was shit talking my boy Walter Scales, shit talking my boy Braxton Berrios here. He says, if Berrios is so good, no way a piss poor offensive team like the Jets would let him walk. He was the Jets' fourth receiver. Listen, I'm not saying he's a perfect receiver, but he's young. He can continue to develop, and he hasn't had a good quarterback or a good offensive coordinator in his entire career at the New York Jets. He is a dynamic punt and kick returner. He's got the speed to do the gadget stuff, and he can play the slot. Like, he's got a whole bunch of traits that you like, that you hope you can coach and get the best out of when you put him in a real offense. So to me, I really like Braxton Berrios as like that hybrid Beasley, Isaiah McKenzie, Emmanuel Sanders, James Washington gives me those vibes. Brian Pringle gives me those vibes as guys who can maybe do some inside-outside stuff, still be a threat deep. And then Isaiah McKenzie, Jakeem Grant from the Bears sticks out like a sore thumb as sort of a Isaiah McKenzie type of replacement level player. And even though it's a downgrade, a guy like Khalif Raymond from the Lions gives you a little bit of gadget stuff as well. So if the Bills are looking for budget versions of what they previously had, those could be those budget versions. But, I know you had one of those budget version guys in there, Brian Pringle, Dave. And then I want you to talk about another guy who's been coming up in the comment section a ton, your other guy, DJ Chark.
Yeah. So both guys coming up in the comment section a bunch. Byron Pringle, obviously with the Chiefs last year, played a majority of his snaps out of the slot, but he was pretty evenly split. If you look at his snap allotment, it was about 400 snaps out of the slot, about 300 or so out wide. So he has that inside outside flex. He's young, he's fast. He, to me, is a guy that if you're not willing to go up and spend on a Christian Kirk, right, who we both feel maybe is a little bit overvalued, or I'd say anything 10 million north for Christian Kirk is too much for me, right? I'd rather take that money and put it on Byron Pringle, right? You may end up being able to spend less on Byron Pringle AAV than you're going to potentially pay Cole Beasley in 2022. So I really like the idea of Byron Pringle as an option. He's been on our lists pretty much all off season. He's been on all of our kind of other free agent shows. He's been on our free agent draft that we had. Like, he was my guy, right? Like, he's the guy I picked, and I think he's a good fit. I think he brings versatility. And also, by the way, as I get into my next guy, offers you an ability to give a guy term, right? It's not a 1 year situation. Like, you can give him multiple years, like you did with Cole Beasley at the time. You can give him 3-4 years and feel pretty comfortable about it. The next guy will probably cost you a little more, and it's been mentioned a bunch. I think Titus mentioned it. A couple other people mentioned it in the comment section, and that's DJ Chark. And I mentioned DJ Chark because we're talking about a guy just a few short years ago who ran a 4.34 at the combine. He's got that vertical speed. He had put up very good number. He had a 1,000-yard season with Gardner Minshew throwing him the ball 2 years ago. Obviously, he had the injury last year that sidelined him. But here's a guy with vertical speed, tall, 6'4", and just when you think, hey, well, what's that going to mean for Gabriel Davis? Well, you look at Gabriel Davis, and he actually played about 30% of his snaps out of the slot. So while bringing DJ Chark in over, let's say, a Byron Pringle maybe doesn't give you the supreme versatility that you might get with a Pringle, right? Where you could really use Pringle as your slot guy. If you brought in Chark and you had Chark, Davis, and Diggs, you'd really kind of have to figure out really how you'd want to work that slot if Beasley wasn't in the picture.
Diggs in the slot with Chark
Diggs
and
in the slot.
Davis.
And Davis can play in the slot, right? 30% of his snaps were in the slot, but you just wouldn't have that twitchy guy, right? Like the Cole Beasley short area quickness guy. So I like the idea of DJ Chark as an option, but I think it still leaves you that issue, Steve, where you don't get your warm and fuzzy kind of real slot guy, right? So that's why, for me, from a value proposition standpoint, I like Pringle because he's going to be cheaper and he gives you the more flexibility for the inside out and as a more of a pure slot guy. So those Pringle honestly would be like my top of my wish list as like a very reasonable signing the Bills could make. right, with the money they have.
I'm
So,
legitimately curious how much he's going to get, because this was by all means probably his breakout season, and now he's hitting the market. So I'm
there's
very
no,
curious.
I can't see him getting more than $5 million a year.
Neither can I,
I
but
just can't.
I'd honestly be shocked. You think the Bills would go for it at $5 million for what he
Probably.
actually is?
If I was the Bills, I would maybe go in at like a 3-year, $13 million, 3-year, $12 million, and see if you could get that
Yeah.
with Byron Pringle. I'd be comfortable.
And the
with
thing,
that.
if the Bills do that, I'm pretty sure it's because they feel comfortable. Not to say he's the full level replacement, but Brian Pringle can do a little McKenzie stuff. He's got that speed to burn.
Yep.
And he also wouldn't embarrass himself sort of in that Beasley role as like the everyman slot receiver. Now, if you do sign a guy like Brian Pringle, you're going to want to go draft a guy relatively early too, to partner with him and sort of have them compete in that 3-4 spot.
Right.
But,
yeah.
But
also
yeah,
be the kick returner too.
Yeah. But
Yes.
when you talk about completely different, Christian Kirk, DJ Chark, those are two guys you sign and you are drastically changing your offense. You're talking more digs in the slot, like different types of things, different types of receivers, different elements to the offense. That's where you start to feel like this is different. But hey, a ton of other receivers out there. Jessica Tennis mentions John Brown. Hey, we get to training camp. He wants to come in and compete. All the power.
My honorable mention is Zay Jones.
Zay Jones, who I think is going to get paid by someone. Damier Bird is a guy that I've always been a fan of. I mean, again, the list is a mile long of
so many
wide receivers who are available. So it should.
And what I love about the comment section is everyone has like different philosophies, right? Like people like Spin saying, I want a speed boundary guy. And then you see other people saying like, I want a slot guy to replace beat. Like it's a very fun discussion to have because you see the different philosophies and honestly, that any of them could work because you have Josh Allen at the helm, right? If Ken Dorsey can fit scheme to his personnel, then it could work, right? Any of these things could work.
Titus comes in and says Jakeem is a sleeper. Obviously, he's Isaiah McKenzie. He's a gadget guy, right? Like he's very much a kick returner, punt returner, gadget guy. Add that speed element to your offense, but you got to work packages for him. He's not going to be an everyday part of your offense. But I've been a big fan of him since Texas Tech. Steve Lynn comes in and says T.Y. Hilton. Maybe Sanders comes back. All these things are obviously options. But the one thing we haven't talked about this offseason is return specialist, right? Like last year, that was huge. Andre Roberts is gone. What are we going to do? Is it going to be Isaiah McKenzie? Are we going to draft a guy like this? That conversation, at least on this show, is sort of like withered away a little bit. And it's crazy to me that that's happened after what happened in the playoffs and what happened late in the season. I very much don't think the Buffalo Bills have their opening day kick and punt returner on the roster right now. I don't think it's going to be Marquez Stevenson.
Anyone see this? This is hilarious. I'm sorry I did that to you.
Deontay Harris, we have to check in on Deontay Harris in the next coming days because he's an RFA. I haven't seen any reports that the Saints aren't tendering him. My guess is the Saints are probably going to try to keep him as hard as they can. Gunnar Olszewski from the Patriots is an RFA. He is another name to keep an eye on.
Who was the guy you mentioned, Steve? Erickson, right? As a kick returner?
Alex Erickson, who's kicked around the league the past couple of years since being the Bengals return man. He ain't special.
No.
Cordarrelle Patterson only returns kicks. He's never returned a punt. I'm looking at some other guys. DeAndre Carter from the Washington Commanders. I know that I'm like the biggest Washington Commander stan in terms of free agents. I like a lot of the Commanders free agents. I liked a lot of it. Every year there's just a random team. Like every year, like for some reason, I like Bengals free agents too, because I just don't think they live up to their potential, at least until they made the Super Bowl.
Who was that Washington linebacker I really liked last year in free agency? Pierre Lewis. Kevin Pierre Lewis.
Yeah, but it's DeAndre Carter from Washington. He's just a guy. He's their kick and punt returner. He's their return specialist in Washington. And every once in a while, they use him as sort of like a player on offense in a package. Like people are like, the Bills could like on the first day of free agency sign DeAndre Carter, and people would be like, "What? Like what? Like what? Who?" So like I kind of like skimmed the list of guys who had kick and punt return flex. It wasn't a big list. It was DeAndre Carter, unless I missed somebody. So feel free in the comment section. Andre Roberts, I don't know if he's a free agent or not. I would assume maybe he was. He probably didn't get a very long deal when he signed with the Chargers, unless he signed back. But the list I saw, at least on Spot Track, as I was digging through the running backs and the wide receivers looking for guys with flex, punt and kick return, because the punt part is the most important.
Mm.
I came across DeAndre Carter. I came across Jakeem Grant. And I came across Khalif Raymond of the Lions.
Wait, what about Darrington Evans?
Does he have punt return flex?
I don't know.
So
I have a question for you guys though on this, right?
Crowder did it back in the day, and
yeah, I'm not expecting Crowder to do it.
Keelan Cole has done it a little bit in his career punt return. So those are the other guys. But sorry.
Oh, I was gonna ask you guys, like, what if we get into the same situation that we found ourselves last year, where it's like we draft a wide receiver in the middle rounds who's done kick and punt returns in college, and then you're like going to camp and it's like Stevenson against this rookie. Like we're almost in the same boat as we were last year with McKenzie against Stevenson.
Well,
and
I hope we bring in another guy like last year we brought
Bayless
in Brandon
Jones.
Powell. Yeah,
True,
like
we did bring in Brandon Powell.
Super
last
Bowl
year to
champion Brandon
That's
Powell.
what's so nuts about that, right? But I hope we bring another guy in like that. And DeAndre Carter literally screams Brandon Powell 2.0, that kind of idea. Bring him in to compete, see if he can win it, and then have a 3-headed competition between him, Stevenson, and hopefully like a Bo Melton or a Velas Jones.
Yeah.
I think that's how you want to try it.
Oh, I'm handing Velas the job.
And we're not going to get to this until like later on in draft season, but I need people to remember the name. And you probably, when you hear this name, you're going to think back to the Rose Bowl this year. Britton Covey of University of Utah. Is a guy like he did the Mormon mission or whatever. So he's an older prospect, like 25, which means he's going to be like a 6th, 7th round pick or the UDFA. Like if you're looking for the Gunnar Olszewski or the Braxton Berrios of this draft, Britton Covey's sitting there like 5'10", 175 pounds. He's returned kicks and punts his entire life at Utah. Like this dude's got like almost like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I mean, like I'm talking 20, 30 punts returns a year at Utah, multiple years. He was their return specialist and slot receiver at the University of Utah. So a guy like Britton Covey is a guy you can get the 6th or the 7th round. He immediately comes in. He's your wide receiver 6, kick punt returner, boom, from day one. I would feel super comfortable with that. So Britton Covey is one of my sleepers in this draft. And like I said, people might remember him from the Rose Bowl. He returned a kick like 104 yards for a touchdown or something like that. Like he's house some. You know, Marcus Jones is the popular one amongst Bills Mafia. I know Jack Jones has experience, even though it's not a ton. I'm looking at cornerbacks, and because we already mentioned the wide receivers. So I think kick and punt return is going to come back in an interesting way. I think the Buffalo Bills might sign somebody at some point, and it's going to pop, and we're going to have a conversation. There's probably just someone I'm missing. Like I said, like those guys, like those Brandon Powells that you mentioned, don't even show up on the spot track list. So like, there's probably some dude out there that I've just like, we'll sign and be like, yeah, I've heard of that dude. But there was no way I could have unearthed him on my Google search in preparation for this show. Christian Wade's not on the roster, by the way, for anyone. I've seen Christian Wade mentioned twice today. Not on the roster, at least Sal Capaccio's roster. So Christian Wade is not a Buffalo Bill currently, at least according to Sal Capaccio's roster thingy that he posts on Twitter every time there's a free agent that leaves or a player that gets cut. Christian Wade's not. I don't think Christian Wade was signed to a futures deal, so we'll have to check in on Christian Wade. He might be. I'm just going off of that roster that's Sal posts. So
it does not look like he is.
I don't think he's on the Bills roster. I don't think Christian Wade is a Buffalo Bill. So yeah, sad realization that Christian Wade. Someone in the comment section just now realized that Christian Wade is not a Buffalo Bill and had to like step away from their computer or step away from their phone. Had to go light a candle.
There's someone out there who still thinks Antonio Williams is on the team too.
David Kane said that Jack Eichel had a complete meltdown in his press. Apparently, Jack Eichel had a complete meltdown in his press conference after the Sabres shit kicked him tonight. So I know there's probably not. I know according to Kim Pagula, the Sabres fans and the Bills fan are not the same, but I can't wait till this show's over.
Let it go.
So watch Jack Eichel have a meltdown. But anyway, let's move on now to defensive end, because this is surely going to be a topic that is not controversial at all. I got under some people's skin today where like Khalil Mack goes to the Chargers. People want Chandler Jones. Like I get that, but like, and you know, I made the comment, like, I think Emmanuel Ogbah, he's number one on my list, is the Trey Hendrickson of this draft or of this free agency class. I think if he goes into the right situation, is an instant impact, double sack, power edge rusher type of dude. I think that is Emmanuel Ogbah. But that being said, I don't know if going and chasing a name is necessary here. because I just don't know if the Buffalo Bills scheme is going to allow these dudes to go chase sacks like they do in other places.
Yeah.
I just don't know if that's feasible. We play that off zone quarter. Like, I don't know what it is, but it just seems like for 10 years now, maybe Kendall, you can speak to this a little bit. As a Bills fan, it's like, why the fuck does every quarterback get the ball out of his hands so quick when he's playing the Buffalo Bills? Like, why do other teams get the quarterback holding onto the ball for 8 seconds so they get to get the sack? And the Bills are the team. And the Bills are the team where, man, Carson Wentz is getting the ball out of his hands in 0.6 seconds today. Oh,
no, but
man,
you literally just said it. It's because they're playing the Buffalo Bills, and it's twofold. It's one, teams are afraid of our secondary and our defensive line. Despite popular belief, teams are afraid of our productive, pressure-filled defensive line, so they want to get rid of the ball quickly. The reason they can get rid of the ball quickly is because everyone on our defense is taught to take away the deep stuff and read stuff high to low. So we're giving up the easy completions, the short, quick passes, so everyone can gain tackle, get to the football, and hopefully get a stop before 50% of the yard to gain. And that creates a scenario where, everyone feels like Big Ben in that pop gun offense, where it's just like, how can we not get to this guy in 1.5 seconds? But that's almost humanly impossible. So yeah, it's annoying, but yes, the way this defense is coached up in the back end on the coverage side of things, it makes it really, really hard for the front four to get home. But even with that, the Bills were top 10 in sack rate and pressure rate. So even with all the things I just said, they're still finding ways to be productive.
Yeah. Dave, who are some free agents that you have on your list of guys that you think could maybe come in here and make an impact, whether it's just like filling that Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison role as sort of veterans and just adding a veteran presence, or going out and maybe chasing a name or a guy that you think can have a bigger impact? What are your thoughts on some of the free agent edges that you see in this class?
Well, I'm with you on Agba, right? Like, he would have been my number one choice. I think if you're really gonna try to make a splash, I think Agba's a guy that you can give a 4-year contract to, in the neighborhood of $60 million, and that's reasonable, I think, for a guy like him. We had Melvin Ingram on our snake draft as an option, right? I think I picked him when we were doing like the $15 million salary cap snake draft. I know Kendall has mentioned in the past about how Melvin Ingram's pressure rate isn't that great. So there might be a little, smoke and mirrors there with what we believe is his potential versus what is actually transpiring on the field. So I come back to Jerry Hughes in this instance, right? And I say Jerry Hughes is a guy who's rated highly at PFF, has a very good pressure rate, and obviously is looking for that one final ride off into the sunset, right? And I think that knowing where he is in his career and knowing what's on the Bills roster right now with Rousseau, Epinesa, and Basham, Jerry Hughes may look at that and be like, this is my last, this is the best fit for me. I'm familiar with this team, and I can still get paid maybe like $3-4 million to come back for one more year and kind of see what we can do for one more ride. And so I keep coming back to that sort of approach. I think for me, I'm very much of the approach when it comes to edge, either go swing completely for the fences and go for an Agba, or go completely the other way and just bring back a guy like Jerry Hughes. I don't really like the idea of this middle ground type guy like an Ingram that, advanced analytics don't actually say he's that great, and you're going to have to pay him like $7-8 million. So that's kind of where I end up with this whole edge situation.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's not the popular take. I think the best case scenario for the Buffalo Bills is getting Jerry Hughes back at a discount, right?
Yep.
To go along with Rousseau, to go along with, Epinesa, Basham, maybe get Obata back, or Shaq Lawson, who apparently wants the Bills more than the Bills want him. Get those 5 guys in here, get them rotating, and just keep doing what you're doing. I just mentioned chasing Agba. Agba is my plan A. I would love Emmanuel Agba, but if you can't get Emmanuel Agba, I have no interest in Chandler Jones. I really do not. And my plan B would be just like get Mario Addison on the cheap, bring in F.A. Obata, get a guy like Shaq Lawson, just get some veteran presence in there, and move your concentration to the interior of the defensive line, and don't go get one impact defensive tackle. Go out and get 2 or 3 impact defensive tackle, whether it's Harrison Phillips and a free agent, Harrison Phillips, a free agent and a draft pick, a free agent, a draft pick. Like go get some impact players on that interior to take the pressure off the linebackers, to make the linebackers be the best version of themselves, to take the pressure off the edge rushers, to let the Buffalo Bills maybe do some more sticky stuff like man coverage and everything. So the corners obviously can play a role in that as well. So to me, I just think that you're wasting money if you're going out and you're paying some of these edge. You're paying for something that you want, but I don't know if you're going to get it. And you're going to be throwing your money down the toilet, in my opinion. Kendall, you had some interesting stats on Jerry Hughes that I want you to share, and then talk about some of the free agents that maybe interest you, tickle your interest.
Yeah, so I would have picked Jerry Hughes if he wasn't already taken. It's just, I think we're all in agreement that we want Jerry Hughes back because of the value that he strikes. But if you didn't hear it last night on Disguise Coverage, I'll rattle it off quickly. Jerry Hughes was 9th in pass rush win rate with 19.1% times that he was winning his battle, which is getting pressure on the quarterback in under 2.5 seconds. So that's 9th in the NFL. That's better than Matthew Judon, Shaq Barrett, Josh Allen, Jadeveon Clowney, Melvin Ingram, and Chandler Jones. He had 55 total pressures on only 395 pass rush snaps. One player I'll use as reference who had more pressures and more snaps is Emmanuel Ogbah. He had 6 more pressures than Hughes, but he also had 129 more snaps. The rest of these guys that I'm going to name have lesser pressures, fewer pressures than Hughes, and more snaps. Jadeveon Clowney has 2 fewer pressures, 27 more snaps. Brian Burns, 4 fewer pressures with 76 more snaps. Melvin Ingram, 4 fewer pressures, 65 more snaps. Yep. Cam Jordan, 4 fewer pressures, 150 more snaps. And lastly, everyone's beloved Chandler Jones had 8 fewer pressures than Jerry Hughes, yet we want to pay him about $10 million more per year. And he had 106 more snaps to get 8 fewer pressures than Jerry Hughes. So I think when we all say we want Jerry Hughes back, it's because of the value that we're striking and that we believe that pressures matter, even though they don't always end up in a negative play. They more likely than not will result in a at least neutral loss of down play or something negative because QB stats are inherently impacted by pressures.
Before you get to your 2 free agents here, I just want to thank Patrick Tangway here with the $5 super chat. Always appreciate you, Patrick. Thank you for listening. Hour 37 in. I'll appreciate all 160 of you who are still in here with us. Smash that like if you are still in here with us. If you think the Bills need to do something at edge rusher, whether it's re-sign Jerry Hughes or sign a free agent or bring back Shaq Lawson, whatever tickles your fancy. If you think the Buffalo Bills need to do something at the defensive end position, because we only have technically 4 players on the roster, smash that like button and help us out with the old YouTube algorithms here. Danielle Hunter was mentioned as a trade target. Hey, I think Danielle Hunter would be right up there with Emmanuel Ogbah for me. If you can get him for, you saw what Khalil Mack went for today. You can get Danielle Hunter for a 2nd and a 6th. Do it. Well, who are your 2 free agents there, Kendall?
So I talked about it, I think, like the first time I came back on the show with you guys. Agbonia Okoronkwo of the LA Rams. He was a pretty good pass rushing specialist for them. He's graded out well in PFF standards in a similar way to Jerry Hughes. Didn't have a lot of opportunities, but created a lot of pressures and sacks in those limited opportunities. So he's someone I'm interested in. The main reason I'm uninterested in him is because he is a bit on the younger side and lesser experienced side. And with the guys we currently have in the room, I want to make sure there's a vet there. I want to make sure there's someone like a Jerry Hughes, like a Melvin Ingram, someone that's done it before and has done it at a great rate to teach those guys.
I really think it's going to be Mario Addison. I don't know. I'm not on the gram. I'm not young and hip, but somebody apparently Mario Addison was making it pretty clear on Instagram that he was coming back. I don't know. We can check in with Brad.
I'd be fine with that. I just don't want to pay him as much as we've been paying him to do what he's doing.
Yeah. Somewhere between $2 and $4 million.
He's been good. He's been good, but he hasn't been striking the value that we paid him for. So I think that's been obviously the issue with him.
So, I mean, again, oh, sorry. You keep going with your guys there.
Yeah. The last one is just Shaq Lawson. I think he's he's that value play where he's going to be that veteran in the room. He's done it before. We know what he can do in the run game. He can help some guys, learn how they can win with their certain body type and things like that. Obviously, he's been, I should say, Boogie Basham has been comped to Shaq Lawson a lot of times, so he could help Basham in that way. So I think Lawson would be a good ad. I kind of feel like it's inevitable. I almost feel like even if we re-signed Mario Addison, I feel like Shaq Lawson would inevitably be brought in too to at least compete.
It's so funny. So for people who aren't following this, it's pretty darn clear that there were some reports that came out before the playoffs that Shaq Lawson was going to sign on to the practice squad. And then there was some other, then Shaq Lawson came out and he's like tweeting back and forth. Essentially what's going down here is Shaq Lawson wants to come back to the Buffalo Bills. In fact, it might come to the point where he's begging the Buffalo Bills. Like he's knocking down their door and he is actively trying to come back here. And the Buffalo Bills are pretty much saying to him, yeah, we'll get back to you when we get back to you. So he's clearly not the top of their priority list. So at least if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, know that the Buffalo Bills think they can do better than Shaq Lawson. And that if we do sign Shaq Lawson, it'll probably be weeks into free agency after we've exhausted numerous options, because it's pretty clear that he wants to come back. And the Bills are like, yeah, well, let's chat in 6 weeks. Like it seems to be like that's where the Buffalo Bills are with Shaq Lawson right now, which is just kind of funny. I posted on Twitter this morning the GIF of John Cusack in what's the name of that movie where he holds up the
Fidelity.
radio? Yeah, no, not High Fidelity. Where he holds up the radio.
Oh,
Come on! I knew the name of the show this morning. That's how I searched the GIF. Where he just holds up the radio and he plays the music out the girl's window. Someone in the comment section is going to have to know the name of this movie from the 80s, but that's Shaq Lawson right now to the Buffalo Bills, just holding up his boombox and trying to get them to notice him outside their window. But
if he's the FAO Bada of this year, I think that fits the room well.
I want FAO
say
Bada
anything.
back. There
I mean,
go.
so do I.
Anything.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
There we go. But Trey Flowers, I mean, he's an interesting one to add to the scrap heap that exists. That includes Justin Houston. Frank Clark will probably be added to this list any day now. There's a whole bunch of, Dante Fowler Jr. There's a whole bunch of those types of names, veterans. Whitney Merciless is a guy I know that Joe Marino has been sort of really pumping up as a guy who used to be a sack artist, went to Green Bay, dealt with some injuries. Now he's back on the market. Where does Trey Flowers land in that range of all of those different types of free agents? He's not a sack artist. No, he's a length and strength guy, right?
Yeah, he's literally the archetype that Bean just keeps going back to the well of. He is that type and he fits perfectly. But the thing I keep coming back to is what the hell is he going to want in terms of money? Like he was so good with the Patriots. Then he goes to the Lions and he's good, but he's a shell of himself. And then he gets injured. Like what is he going to want in terms of money? And I don't know if the Bills can give it to him. If he wants something like close to Chandler Jones money, like I can't imagine he'd be asking for anything like that. I gotta imagine he'd be more in the Melvin Ingram range of things, but he's still 29 years old. So you never know. There's still gas left in the tank. So I think he's interesting for that reason. He'd be someone I'm very interested in, but it comes down to price when it comes down to Trey Flowers.
All right, let's shift now to the IDL. We got two position groups here left: interior defensive line, cornerback. IDL, it's a loaded class, man. I mean, we got 6 guys that I love on this list here. But even some guys that I don't have on our list, like Linval Joseph could be available. Sebastian Joseph Day is available there. I mean, the list goes on and on. If Harrison Phillips walks in free agency and gets his bag, I think there's plenty of guys we can get in the 4 to 6 million AAV range. And then there's another group of guys we could probably get in the 1.5 to 3 million AAV range. I would love to add 2 in this free agency class. And I think we each, not so much Dave. Dave went with 2 pretty mid-tier guys, but you know what? I think one of his guys could fall into the category of a high and a low, but depending on the market. So. But, Dave, I'm going to let you start with your guys. These are 2 of my favorites if Harrison Phillips walks. Talk through your 2 guys here.
Yeah. Look, it's funny how this kind of list shook out because I feel like we all kind of like the same overall pool of guys, but the way we kind of like narrowed these down ended up being like, I ended up having Foley Fatukasi on my list, and I know Steve's mentioned him before. Like you had Agba, I mentioned. Like it's funny how it worked out, but I like Foley, right? And I think Eric Turner's done some. I don't think they've done a film room. You guys have done a film room on him, but he has posted some clips on Twitter about Foley and his ability to two gap, and I think that is kind of where my focus kind of came, right, when I was looking for kind of these mid-tier type IDLs. And his play, I would say, probably dropped off a little bit in 2021 from where it was in 2020 and 2019. 2019 and 2020, he was graded over an 80 overall from PFF both those years, and dropped down to a 60 in 2021. And again, that's partially because of what the Jets had around, but I think that may actually help the Bills in this case, in that his value maybe won't be on the market what it could have been had he had another strong year and 3 really strong back-to-back years. So I like that possibility for the Bills. Again, if Harrison Phillips isn't brought back in the mix. And obviously Daquan Jones is a guy that you guys did some film room on. I think if I'm not mistaken, he's like 30 years old, or will be 30 and going into this season, but another two-gapper, Panthers guy. Graded out, decently well, top 35 IDL overall per PFF in 2021, and has that ability to two gap. So Daquan Jones to me would be a guy, like if Harrison Phillips doesn't come back and you're looking at Daquan Jones, you could feel somewhat comfortable giving him like a 2, maybe 3-year deal to kind of finish out his tail end of his prime, I'll call it, for potentially less dollars than you would give Harrison Phillips. But in an ideal world, I think I'm with you, Steve. I'd like to see Harrison Phillips back plus one of these other guys. Would be nice.
And I think Daquan Jones could possibly fall into that list of Harrison Phillips plus and Daquan Jones.
Yes.
Depending. I think he would be the pipe dream, because I think there is a team that could would want to pay for a guy like Daquan Jones. Like part of me, like my top guy is Derek Nottie. I think that Daquan Jones, Derek Nottie would be Harrison Phillips replacements, but there's always that chance that you can maybe get them both if they're sitting there a week or two into free agency. Like you saw the Bills strike a little later on Vernon Butler and Quentin Jefferson when they struck on them, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Maybe Quentin Jefferson was early and Vernon Butler was later, but either way, we also didn't get a fucking bargain on them either. But anyway, Kendall, you had Harrison Phillips at the top of your list. Talk a little bit about the importance of bringing Harrison Phillips back. And then you had a good, Harrison Phillips and this guy as your second guy on your list.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've kind of been banging this drum all off season, and it's kind of about the depth at the position more than anything. It's just like what's left in the room right now is really Ed Oliver, Eli Ankou, and the question mark that is Star. Like we don't know what's going to happen with Star. And because of that, I feel like Harrison Phillips has to be a priority. He has to be brought back. I'm not saying Bean has to throw out his price range for him, but I think he has to respect what Phillips means to this locker room, what he means to this community, and what he means to the team. I think he really proved a lot, especially fighting through injuries earlier in the season. And then the way he came on in the second half of the season, you can see he has that ability to two gap, but he's not always asked to do it based on the scheme of the defense. But the way that he and Ed Oliver play off of each other is really, really great stuff. And you saw they were starting to build some chemistry off one another. And they were playing really good football together in the interior of the defensive line. So that's my priority number one. And yeah, I would love to add him. And then my second guy is Austin Johnson, who Ant actually put me onto last night. He played with the Giants, another guy that has ability to two gap, really strong at the point of attack. And the thing is about Austin Johnson, it doesn't necessarily have to be him, but by signing Harrison Phillips, you allow yourself to then de-pigeonhole yourself, so to speak. You're allowed to then go after a 3-tech or a 1-tech in free agency. And even furthermore, you're allowed to draft either a 3-tech or a 1-tech. If you shore up Harrison Phillips and you get yourself a bona fide starting 1-tech in this league, you don't have to prioritize specifically a 1-tech or a 3-tech. You then give yourself flexibility to just build in the trenches on the interior of the trenches. It doesn't have to be one guy or the other. So that's why I feel like Harrison Phillips is priority number 1, but I do feel like Austin Johnson is a good bargain bin option.
A couple of comments here. BJ Hill would be like a guy that I think
like BJ Hill.
His market's going to be higher than
Yeah.
Harrison Phillips. So BJ Hill's a guy you sign, and then because you probably exhausted so much resources in signing him, then you draft a guy, right?
You
And
have
then
to
it's
only
Oliver
draft a
Hill,
guy,
draft a guy. You got Zimmer, you got Bryant. You know, that's sort of the situation you fall into there. You mentioned Austin Johnson. You didn't even mention the guy you had on your list, but like like Daquan Jones would be the tippy top of this. Maybe Derek Nottie would be the tippy top of this, but then below that, the second guy, like the wingman tackle, the tackle we can get a couple of days into free agency. You had Austin Johnson, but also like Austin Johnson, these guys fit into this list. Tim Settle, who you had on your list.
That's who I took off of my list. That's what it was.
Big time. Oh, and you might have changed it, but I turned my Wi-Fi off. So
I literally changed it while we were on the show.
Yeah, so I can't see that because I turned my Wi-Fi off. But damn you, Google Docs. But Tim Settle is a guy that's super interesting.
Yeah.
You know, played with Tremaine Edmonds at Virginia Tech. Big dude, decent pass rush pop for his size. He's got some potential there. And my guy also fits into this category as it's like you get Harrison Phillips or you get Daquan Jones and then you bring another guy in. Taven Bryan. I really like the potential of Taven Bryan. I liked him in the draft a couple of years ago. I thought he was overdrafted when he went in the first round to the Jacksonville Jaguars, but you can see that potential as a backup 3-tech. He flashed even in that game against the Buffalo Bills. He had some good pass rush pop and made Josh Allen's day a living hell. So a guy like Taven Bryan is a guy that you could probably get in free agency where he just flamed out in Jacksonville and can actually find a role here and be a productive 4th defensive tackle here in Buffalo. So I really like Taven Bryan. But again, this is another one. Jerron Reed, like I said, the list is endless of defensive tackles. So you don't have to overpay for a guy like Harrison Phillips, because at the end of the day, you could even you could even fall worst case scenario. You could probably get like Tim Settle, Taven Bryan, and draft a guy. Like it's not the end of the world if that happens because of the position. Would you like to see the Buffalo Bills? Really address this position and hammer it home? Yes. But it's not the end of the world if it doesn't happen. Somebody asked about Starr's contract. Who knows what's going to go on? It's going to be really interesting to see if they settle this over the next 3 days and they post June 1st him. I know that they didn't have to post June 1st AJ Klein because he was last year of his contract. I don't know if they post June 1st did John Feliciano. I don't know if they came out yet or not.
I didn't hear.
So it should be interesting. You only get 2 post June 1st cuts before June 1st. So you can only designate that twice. Starr might want to retire. There's some rumblings he might want to retire. You don't know what you're going to get from him. You don't know how reliable he is. Bills might just cut bait, make him a post June 1 cut. You're going to save $4 million, but you're going to be eating a ton. Like it's going to be like $6 million this year, like $4 million next year, $2.5 million next year, something like that. So you're eating a ton, but you're saving a little. It's just not a great situation that Starr put us into. And there's always that opportunity. There's always that situation where maybe he comes back. I really wouldn't be upset with the Buffalo Bills if the Buffalo Bills were just like, and I made this comment with Tyler Matakevich earlier. It doesn't hurt if you're the Buffalo Bills to go to Starr and to go to Tyler Matakevich and be like, hey, Tyler, you have $1.5 million guaranteed on your contract next year. We can cut you and you could take that $1.5 million and walk and go find another situation, or maybe ask Tyler Matakevich to cut all of his non-guaranteed money and just move him down to 1 year, $1.5 million guaranteed contract. Do the same with Star Lotulelei. Be like, hey, listen, Star, we're stuck with you. Can you just give us back all the non-guaranteed money and just eat your guaranteed money the next 2 years? Like, that might be a situation that they might like try to ask Star Lotulelei to do that. But I mean, we're just grasping at straws now to try to get this dude out of here. Defensive tackle, whether it's signing 2 or signing 1 and drafting a guy, I think you got to add some bodies there because what they have right now is not good enough. And to me, some of the biggest issues with the defense this year has been the lack of that, the play in the middle of the defense there with the defensive line, not allowing other people to be the best versions of themselves. So let's transition now to corner, another position where I think it's going to be sign 1, draft 1, because you don't know what's going on with Trey White. And his ACL, could he be back week 1? Could he not? Do you want to rush him back? Do you not want to rush him back? It's all these question marks. Levi Wallace is a UFA. That leaves you with Dane Jackson, Cam Lewis, Tim Harris, Elijah Griffin, and Nick McLeod. So not exactly a murderer's row of cornerbacks. Even if you sign a guy in free agency, you sign a guy and you have Dane Jackson, and then what? So
Yeah,
you might even want you still got to draft one to bring in some competition for Dane Jackson, not just hand Dane Jackson the job. So likely with the way they're set financially, they're not gonna sign 2. I find it hard to believe they're gonna sign 2. But looking over some of these free agent corners, this is kind of like defensive tackle. There's a ton. Pick your flavor. Titus comes in and says Casey Hayward and Kyle Gordon in the 2nd round. Wonderful. Sidney Jones, I believe, is on someone's list. He's on Tilt's list. So Tilt, talk a little bit about your list here. You got Sidney Jones.
Yeah, Sidney Jones, you guys done film on him. Obviously, it would be a good fit. Seattle runs that cover 3, so it's not too different from a scheme perspective, the zone scheme. He's not the biggest dude, but is really a pretty good tackler. Graded out just outside the top 25 overall corners from PFF last year. Came away with that 70 rating, 69 in coverage. So you like to see that. 6 foot 181. So kind of in that mold that the Bills like. They like those 6 foot, 180, 190 type guys. And Sidney Jones, to me, if you start looking at sort of the cornerback class here and you're like, okay, well, who's going to get paid, right? You start thinking about okay, well, there's the veterans of Patrick Peterson, Kyle Fuller, Joe Hayden. They're not going to get a ton of money. What's Stephon Gilmore going to get, right? What's a guy like Bryce Callahan going to get? J.C. Jackson, right? So there are a lot of names, which I think I don't know exactly how it's going to suppress Sidney Jones' value, but I think that if I'm thinking about Sidney Jones versus Levi Wallace, who's the other guy on my list, and all things equal, if I can get Sidney Jones for $1 million or $2 million less a year, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say bye to Levi Wallace, and I'm going to bring in Sidney Jones to be the CB2. And that's just based purely on I think he's more athletic. I think that he's got a little bit higher ceiling than Levi Wallace. And now obviously that's going to offset somewhat with the fact that Levi's been here and he's got that familiarity. But if Levi Wallace is kind of pricing himself $2-3 million sort of gap between him and Sidney Jones, then I'm bringing Sidney Jones. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying if that all things were equal and the price was that different, I'd bring in Sidney Jones. Now, it could turn out, because we don't know. I mean, we don't know what any of these guys are going to get paid, that my second guy, Levi Wallace, could end up getting less on the market than Sidney Jones, in which case I think I'm comfortable bringing back Levi Wallace at around the $5 million a year price point, if that's what it comes down to, because I don't think you want to go into training camp. Well, you've got the draft obviously too, but I don't think you want to go into the draft. I'll say this. I don't think you want to go into the draft with just Dane Jackson and an uncertain for week 1 Trey White as your top 2 options.
Right. That would be an issue.
A couple people in the comment section coming in with a ton. I think if you get Sidney Jones for between $4 and $6 million, you just do it. I wouldn't even mind. I wouldn't even mind getting him for term, getting him a 3-year.
That's what I'm saying.
So lock him down. But I understand where Titus is coming from is you want to get better. So that's where. Sorry, I missed Titus's comment because everything sort of moved. But he said, hey, you want to try to get better than Levi Wallace. And can you make the argument that Sidney Jones is better than Levi Wallace? No, I'd probably say they're about the same or he's slightly below what you're getting from Levi Wallace. That's when you go draft a guy, right? Finally use that 1st round pick or that 2nd round pick. Go get yourself Trent McDuffie. Go get yourself Roger McCreary. Go get yourself Kyler Gordon. Go get yourself Cam Taylor-Britt, who maybe develops into something. Go get yourself Kaiir Elam. Pick out, 1 or 2 cornerbacks in each of the first 3 rounds that you feel like can turn into something. Tariq Woolen, my guy Josh Williams, some of those smaller school guys who are more athletically gifted.
Sign one, draft one.
Sign one, draft one. But Kendall, you had a name on your list, Casey Hayward Jr. I put him, Steven Nelson, and Rasul Douglas sort of in the category of probably going to get like 8-9 million AAV. But if you can get him down towards 6 or 7, I'd be interested. And you also got another Sidney Jones type and Akila Witherspoon. Talk a little bit about those guys.
So I'm personally of the mindset that Casey Hayward will not get paid like that because he was on the market for so long last year.
And he delivered.
But he did well when he went to Las Vegas, and he did a good job, but he's still 33 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
And are you betting on that another year after that? I mean, it's understandable. Like he's been good his entire career. For whatever reason, the Chargers let him go. He spent his time on the open market, and then the Raiders picked him up, and he had a good year. But 33 years old, I feel like he's going to lose some musical chairs in some ways, and he's going to have to take less than what he thinks he deserves. And he definitely deserves some money, but that age will dampen the market, in my opinion. Why I think he fits, though, is because he's played so much zone coverage for the past 5 years of his career. He has the reactive athleticism, although it's diminished due to his age. He has the reactive athleticism to keep up in man coverage. But what's the best part about him is he's a veteran. And if it's just him and Dane Jackson and a rookie to start the year, I feel really good about him holding down the fort as a vet at CB1. And then, Dane Jackson and whoever that rookie is competing for that CB2 spot while Trey White is recovering. And then when Trey White recovers, then you have a 3-headed competition for CB2 between Hayward, rookie, and Dane Jackson. So that's why I'm so intrigued in Casey Hayward as that vet option to kind of alleviate some of that pressure. Kilo Witherspoon, on the other hand, is someone who's just so athletically gifted and big and lengthy that I can't help myself but be interested in him as a zone corner for this scheme. He just fits the archetype so perfect for what the Bills want in his zone corner, and he has the athleticism to hold up in press man specifically. Definitely not the most fleet of foot in terms of change of direction skills because he's so lengthy. It takes more to change direction quickly when you have long limbs, but he is athletic enough to recover. And that's really where it comes into. He could also allow us to operate in man coverage, but you're really getting him because of his length, his strength, and his ability to operate in zone. And I think he's intriguing for that reason. I think Casey Hayward's probably going to be more like that 6 to 7 million AAV. I think Akila Witherspoon is going to be more between that 3.5 to 5.5 range.
All right. Well, it was my job to shoot for the moon with my 2 picks. So I'm going to go with the 2 shoot for the moon picks. The first guy I had was via free agency, and that was Dante Jackson. Got that Carolina Panther connection, played with Trey White. He's a guy the Buffalo Bills looked at in the pre-draft process, quite a number of years ago. I know Cover One, guys like Eric, did quite extensive film work on him coming out of LSU. Hasn't quite lived up, but this guy's an athlete, and he's got speed to burn. He can turn, he can run with those speedsters like Tyreek Hill, and that's what people are going to want. And despite the fact that he's, 4 years into his career now, dealt with some injuries last year, I think the Buffalo Bills, DBU here, the coaching staff who feels like they can develop defensive backs, maybe still see him like a rookie. They still see him like that ball of clay, even though it hasn't exactly developed in the National Football League. I wouldn't be surprised if they went and they threw Dante Jackson out there. JC Jackson would be definitely shooting the moon. I heard some rumblings he might have been the player that approached the Bills in Indy, and the Bills were kind of like, this is great and all, but
we can't afford it.
What do you want from us? It's cool that you like us, but the other player that I have here is James Bradberry, and that would be via trade. So I laid out a trade where the Buffalo Bills sent Darrell Williams to the New York Giants the other day and a 4th-round pick, and in return got Dante Jackson, I think, not Dante Jackson, James Bradberry, and a 5th-round pick or something like that, or a 6th-round pick. So it could just be something as simple as trading a 3rd-rounder or a 4th-rounder. Who knows what the market for a guy like James Bradberry would be? I think the longer we go into the offseason, the lower his price probably becomes, especially as the Giants start to make moves and stuff. But so that's not, I don't think that's a Monday afternoon shocker. I don't think that's a Saturday afternoon shocker. Right. So I think that James Bradberry is more of a slow burn type of move. than it is something that you're going to see happen right away. But that's shooting for the moon, right? A guy who's a bona fide corner in the National Football League. He'd line up next to Trey White, and you could start doing some things with James Bradberry that you couldn't do with Levi Wallace. Press the line of scrimmage a little bit more, get a little bit more physical with receivers, and that might allow some of the defensive ends to convert those pressures to sacks. So he's just the kind of guy, he's the kind of stud. He's like, it's not like can you replicate what Levi Wallace did? Like, no, he's an improvement over Levi Wallace, but you pay for that improvement. You'd have to restructure his contract, hopefully get him for like 3 years, $30 million, 10-year AAV. Like, that's the type of deal. And are the Buffalo Bills willing to invest that in a CB2, especially when they're already paying Trey White a ton of money? Paying a CB2 big money would probably become that would probably be, all right, we're mortgaging the future on Trey White and your base salary, restructuring him, right? And you're lopping $10 million off of his salary in 2022, and you're spread it out over the remaining years of his contract. So you're probably kicking the can down the road and bringing Trey White's cap number down in order to pay some of these other guys like James Bradberry or some of these other high-end free agents. Carlton Davis is another name out there that didn't get tagged by the Buccaneers when I thought he would have, or even JC Jackson. So, and Jax makes the comment, JC Jackson wants to come to Buffalo. He doesn't have to play against Stephon Diggs anymore.
That's my prevailing thought every time I think about him being the guy that came up to
that first time in the locker room would be a little awkward, eh?
Probably.
He's one guy. I heard the Chargers for him, but now they're paying Khalil Mack. So who knows? Maybe that brings JC Jackson back into play for the Bills. To me, he's like the most overrated superstar in the National Football League. I don't get the love for JC Jackson, but
gets interceptions. It's like sacks.
It is what it is. Yeah. All right. So we're 2 hours and 6 minutes in. So I say we wrap this shit up. Gentlemen, we good? We're up to 167. We went up. So kudos to, seriously though. Like,
yeah, how do you guys stick in for this? You guys are nutty as us.
I will say this, like, it's this time
free agency, man. People are wild.
It's
wild right now.
It's this time of year. Our shows go longer than they do in the regular season.
Yeah.
Our viewership increases as we get later on into the night. Like, you guys are incredible, man. Like, every single one of you guys in the comment section, whether you're ducking in for 20 minutes here or there and then listening back later, whether you're here throughout the whole show with us, like, dude, super blessed. None of them. I want a rookie. I want to go get your Tyler Bass. Obviously, you're going to need a veteran of some kind. Whoever they pick, as long as it's not Matt Hockham. I was sitting here trying to like have like a nice, emotional thanking of the comment section, but
sorry.
No, it's okay because free agent punters are important.
Listen,
I need you guys. If Matt Hawk is still a Buffalo Bill on Monday, he gets a $1 million roster bonus, and he's a $1 million hit on our roster that we don't have to save. Is Matt Hawk still on the roster on Monday? The closer we get, the more scared I get. Is Brandon Beane just like, fuck you, Bills Mafia, for being so mean to our punter on Twitter that I'm going to wait until 11:59?
No. I think what he's doing, I think he's making moves to like, he's probably going to be the last domino to fall. He's trying to like see what.
I think he's trying to do like one thing a day, right? It's like one day AJ Klein, the next day John Feliciano, the next day we re-sign. He's just trying one new story a day.
Trying to clear up moves for something or someone, and he knows he's not getting much money out of releasing Hawk, so he's trying to knock over the bigger dominoes.
I wouldn't even be surprised if they go right down to the wire and he's telling Matt Hawk's agent, go talk to whoever you want, and if you can't find anyone by Monday, we want to amend your contract to turn that $1 million roster bonus on March 1st or whatever, or March whatever the new league year is, March 14th or whatever. We want to change that to 53-man. If he makes a 53-man, he gets that $1 million. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's some sort of agreement. And then they go draft a guy and they bring in competition for Matt Hawk. So should be interesting. But ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much. Like 160 of you plus in here. Absolutely incredible. Dave's definitely got to go. His boy's yelling at him.
I gotta go. I gotta go.
So, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Are we having fun yet?